Okay. This is a special meeting of the East Amwell Township Committee in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Notice of the meeting was filed in the clerk's office, posted on the bulletin board, and sent to the Hunterdon County Democrat, Times of Trenton, Star Ledger on January 22nd, 2019. Purpose of the meeting is to discuss the 2019 budget with the CFO.
Could we start by doing a pledge allegiance to the flag?
Certainly, if you'd like to. Yep.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Terry, anything you want to go through first?
This is just a budget
Yep.
meeting, so no, we're good.
Okay. Let me just lay out how we're going to do this meeting, and then, Margaret, the floor will be yours. We have an hour and a half. We have from 6 until 7:30. We're going to start by letting Lisa Davis give us a presentation that we discussed at the last meeting. We told her we would give her 10 minutes to talk to us about the ERI. Then we're going to go on the budget till about 7:15, at which point we'll stop. And to the extent any members of the public want to comment on the budget, we'll leave 15 minutes for comment. If the comments go beyond 15 minutes, we'll start the regular meeting, but people can then present their comments during the regular meeting. So with that bit of background, you good?
I'm good.
Oh, by the way, we have 2 committee members stuck in traffic, but they'll be here shortly. Margaret, why don't you take the floor?
Okay, so you're going to have Lisa come up first?
Oh, yeah, come on, I'm sorry, come on up, Lisa. You just look like you were chomping at the bit, Margaret.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Davis. I live at 32 Stony Brook Road. I have a few things just to give you. I'm not going to talk about everything that I've written here, but since this is kind of the more sort of dense version of what I am going to be saying, I thought you might want to have a copy for reference.
Thank you. And if you could leave 2 more for...
Of course, yeah. Should I begin just at there?
Yeah, that'd be fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I also did I sent you all through Terry a sort of overview, right, of the samples that I sent along as well as all the samples. So I don't know if you need, I brought copies of the overview if you'd like to have it.
Can't hurt to have.
I'll take
one, yeah. Can't hurt, right?
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so I thought what I would do, I am sensitive to the time frame, and so as I said, I'm not going to go through everything that I've written down here, but I will sort of pull out the key points. And what I'd like to do is just talk about environmental resource inventories. Henceforth, I will say ERIs, it's much easier. The sort of general significance of ERIs, and then I'd like to talk about some specific examples, cases in the history of East Amwell in which the kind of data that would appear in an ERI turned out to be really instrumental for planning here, and maybe some examples of future cases in which an ERI might be really helpful. So, ERIs, as you know, these are inventories of your municipalities' environmental features and natural resources. I put a whole list here. Of course, we're talking about climate, topology, soil type, soil quality, water bodies, wildlife habitats, etc. Also on this list might go conservation easements, for example. As you might be aware, our current conservation easement inventory is a bit spotty and out of date, but it is one of the responsibilities of the Environmental Commission to inspect and enforce those easements, and that's part of what we might do through the ERI. In addition to inventorying all of the features that exist within the boundaries of the township, the ERI also would deal with how East Amwell shares in regional features, right, with surrounding communities. So wetlands, watersheds, water bodies, and groundwater open space that we share with surrounding communities. The point of having an ERI, to my mind, the central point anyway, is to have objective, comprehensive information available all in one place. for easy reference and easy updating. The Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions, ANJEC, advises updating ERIs every 10 years at the very most, or whenever the environment has undergone significant changes due to weather events, development, contamination, etc. So, what are ERIs used for? They contain the data that should, to my mind anyway, inform planning decisions that protect the environment while allowing for smart development. So decisions like where to locate a new road, how to deal with stormwater to prevent flooding in particular areas, how to site a new building to take advantage of wind and solar energy, for example. And here in what I've given you, you can see I've sort of created a list of all of many different uses for ERIs, which include revising or creating new land use ordinances and conservation ordinances, assessing the municipality's need for renewable energy resources, stormwater management, green infrastructure, identifying lands for conservation and preservation. This next item I think is especially important. They can be used to, if you establish a good baseline of comprehensive data, that would allow you to actually evaluate changes in the environment over time, including what's going on with the aquifers, what's going on with wildlife populations, changes that might again be due to extreme weather events, climate change, changes in local traffic, erosion, contamination, and so forth. So it gives you a benchmark, right, for assessing how things are changing over time. Another important use of the ERI, of course, is assessing the potential environmental impacts of development projects, right? So, as you know, when variance applications and, more to the point, development applications come to the planning board, the Environmental Commission gets a copy in order to do a site review and assess the potential environmental impact of the project. The ERI is, again, the factual basis for any assessment of that kind. Assessments made by applicants themselves, to my mind, cannot be considered independent or objective. The environmental impact statements that developers are required to provide to municipalities very often are quite superficial and inaccurate. They often understate the potential damage to the environment that a project might cause. So the township needs to have its own basis for this kind of assessment, and the ERI is that kind of basis. And it might be interesting to note that some municipalities, like Reddington Township, right here in Hunterdon County, have ordinances that require developers to consult the town's ERI when they are preparing their own environmental impact statements. So the town's ERI becomes the data basis for the environmental impact statements that developers are consulting. It's another use. Of course, ERIs can also be used to educate residents. This is one of the central missions of Environmental Commission, is to educate residents about the environment and how to protect it. And I was thinking of, children in township school. These ERIs in surrounding municipalities have been used in science classes in middle schools in Hunterdon County for environmental projects and local history projects. I was thinking back to my own high school days, taking macrobiology and imagining that a local ERI might be a very useful document for students to use when they're learning about microbiology. Finally, if East Amwell had an ERI, an up-to-date ERI, surrounding municipalities could also use it as a basis for their planning. We share, of course, watersheds and wildlife populations with neighboring communities. We drink some of the same water, we breathe some of the same air. It's in our interest to be able to inform other municipalities about the environmental features of our township so that can be taken into consideration in their planning decisions. So I think it's in our interest to have a comprehensive, accurate inventory that can be updated regularly. So to give you just a little sense of where we're at, as you probably know, it was back in 1968 that New Jersey passed the legislation that authorized municipalities to form environmental commissions. East Amwell's was formed in 1970. It was one of the first in the state of New Jersey, and that environmental commission actually did produce an ERI in the 1970s. It exists only in paper copy, and I'm glad Frances is here because she can maybe weigh in during the comment period. The original ERI, as I understand it, included some wonderful overlay maps, and it was quite a comprehensive, at the time, inventory. It exists on paper in the archives of the municipal building, and I do want to acknowledge Frances for all the work she did last year, actually copying that paper copy and beginning to scan it so that we could have easier digital access to that information. But even when we have full access to that information, it's 40-plus years old. We need to be able to actually go do a comprehensive review of that information to see what is relevant and what's not, what needs to be updated. I imagine that we would need to add substantial material to the old ERI, and of course we'll need to integrate it with all of the new environmental and land use policies that have arisen since the 1970s, and using new data technologies that have arisen since the 1970s. So we're lucky to have this old ERI, but it needs an awful lot of work. I'm not going to go through in detail all of the other documents and reports that we on the Environmental Commission have been able to find that have some relevant information. There are quite a few. But I did want to give you a sense of where our budget request is coming from, because I think that's why we're here at the budget meeting. As you know, we did request $500 last year, and then we requested the same $500 basically this year. The number 500 came from the town planner, who consulted with David last year, and at that time she estimated that that's the amount that would cover her expenses for doing an initial review of all of the existing materials and figuring out their relevance and their significance. We really need that expert help in order to get started and actually sort of map out a process for filling in and adding new material. I believe that currently on the Environmental Commission, only one of us has an environmental science background. None of us has engineering or planning backgrounds, and that kind of expertise is crucial to producing a comprehensive and accurate ERI. We need help figuring out what more we need to know that we don't know already. Now, you may know I've personally spent a lot of time over the last year trying to figure out what granting agencies exist in New Jersey that might help to fund that kind of consultation. And unfortunately, the only source that's still doing this, to my knowledge, is Sustainable Jersey, which environmental commissions can't apply to, only green teams can. So in any case, we on the Environmental Commission, if we go ahead with this ERI project, we expect to do a lot of the work ourselves, but there is some work that we cannot do ourselves, in my opinion. And so the $500 that we've been requesting is to help us get started with that sort of expert review and consultation to help us figure out how to really get this project underway. Okay, so quickly, a couple of cases in which the kind of data that I think ought to be compiled in an ERI was crucial to planning in East Amwell. One example, of course, is mountain zoning, and as you all know, and most people in the room probably know a lot more about this than I do, although I've tried my best to learn about the history. Zoning in the Sauerland Mountain District, where I happen to live, was reassessed and revised from the late 1980s through the early 2000s due to concerns over logging and farming and also residential use in that area, and the potential threat to the fragile ecosystem, and also, of course, the very small reserves of water in that area and the difficulty of processing wastewater in that area. So my understanding is that in 2002, the planning board hired a hydrogeologist who produced a report and a set of recommendations about permitting densities and lot sizes in the Sauerland district. And those policies were passed in 2003. And I understand they've survived a couple of legal challenges over the years because they were based on solid, comprehensive data about the capacities of that of the local environment in the Sauerland district. To my mind, this is exactly the kind of data to which we should have ready access. I found references to those reports in a bunch of other documents that I was able to find, but I can tell you I have no idea where the report is. I don't know anyone who does know where it is. This is one of the questions we would want to be able to talk with the town planner about. It should be found, and the data should be updated and included in an ERI. So that's one example. Another example is the Hellestop. So, as I said at the Township Committee meeting on November 8th, when we first discussed the issue publicly, if we'd already had then a robust and up-to-date ERI with good data on the environmental features of the area in and around the ridge, I think the Environmental Commission would have been able to produce a really compelling statement on potential groundwater impacts and also threats to wildlife populations in the area. We could have included extensive data and given pretty precise estimations about the potential threats, and I think we could have done it pretty quickly and easily with good maps and tables. And what actually happened is that a couple of the Environmental Commission members and have had to do a lot of work to pull it together at the last minute without access to robust and precise data.
Lisa, we're going to have to wrap this up. We're going on 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Time goes by fast.
Okay.
We have to move on to the budget.
Okay.
We'll read your written submission. I've already read this.
Uh-huh.
I've already gone through the West Amwell.
Uh-huh.
I have at least some familiarity with what an ERI is.
Okay.
We'll look at what you submitted, but we have to get on to the budget.
Okay, so I'll just say the master plan reexamination, which has to happen by 2023, is a place where the ERI would be very helpful, as well as if there is a project to improve Ringo's Village. There are a number of recommendations that were made in the study from 2014 that might have environmental impacts. So those were some examples that I thought of where an ERI would be very useful in the future. Okay?
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have one question.
Yeah,
You mentioned conservation easements.
yeah,
You could do those without an ERI.
true,
Okay, thank you.
true. And, yeah,
Yeah, we did.
yeah.
I
50
thought-
years
I just-
ago,
I heard the-
Jenny.
I got the answer, thank you.
Okay, Margaret, you want to go ahead and,
All right, we did get a lot of work done at the last meeting. I updated everything that we put into that we decided from the last meeting. You all have the new updated sheets. There is actually another update on top of that. I just did the sheets that were necessary to change. Basically what it was is that Mr. Davidson gave me a copy of the approved Hunterdon County Historic Grant that's coming through, so I just added that. It doesn't change the tax rate or anything because it's an in and out. Just makes the numbers a little bigger. All right, I'm just gonna go quickly back over some of the things that we discussed last time. We're in general administration, we did move a portion of that to IT. You had a question about the budget for the audit, if we had wanted to do a more in-depth audit. I did talk to the auditors, and I had emailed both the mayor and the deputy mayor with his response that it really wasn't expecting it to be an additional fund. So, the tax assessor, I did finally find the sheet that dropped down her budget significantly. She went from the 40,000 in the legal back down to 14, so that was already changed. We did put in here that we were going to revisit planning board and office of emergency management, so that we'll need to go over that tonight. And then the other thing I want to talk about is the dollar amount put into the capital improvement fund. I did email everyone saying that I had come up with a figure based on what we were going to do for the DOT grant, what we could possibly use for chip sealing and routine maintenance. And I did include that as it updated in these totals here. So I guess the first thing, if you want to just look over planning board again.
Planning board, we had a meeting last night. And there have been some discussions in advance of the meeting. My own view was that there was too much work being done by professionals and we were running up excessive fees. And we have a significant amount of in-house talent on the planning board. The planning board members agreed with that. And so we decided at the planning board meeting last night that the planning board members would take the first cut at applications rather than immediately going out and handing it off to the professionals. So there'll be an application review subcommittee. There's also going to be a municipal ordinance or land use ordinance review subcommittee. And the goal is really to put control of the planning board in the hands of the planning board members rather than the professionals. Because my own view and the view of others is that for years, the professionals have been running the planning board more so than the planning board members. Applications would come in or issues would arise, it would go to the professionals, it would be filtered through the professionals before it ever even made its way to the planning board members, and that just didn't strike me as right, particularly given the talent that we have on the planning board. So my hope and my expectation is that the planning board budget will start to go down. We have affordable housing largely behind us, not entirely. There's still work to be done, but it's largely done. And because we will start doing more things in-house, I think we should start seeing a positive impact on the planning board budget. So at this point, I'm not looking to increase the number that you have in here.
Okay, should we leave it and then maybe see if next year if we've not spent
I would
much?
do that.
Because I don't want to be cut short.
I
but
agree with you, and this is
you know,
experimental, and we may decide it's not going to work. I'm optimistic it will, given the in-house talent that we have on the planning board. But my hope is that next year, when we're sitting down, we see very positive results.
All right, the other one we were going to revisit was the Office of Emergency Management, where we have $1,500.
That's yours, Tim.
Yeah, I think we could take that down and just leave 500 in it.
500,
We've
okay.
never spent money. The new website is taking on a lot of the communication aspects that were envisioned at some point. So, and by nature, if there is a disaster and emergency, we could do emergency funding through another source if we had to. So, and it wouldn't be enough. I mean, 1,500 wouldn't be enough to cover an emergency. So, I think it's prudent to leave it at 500, just in case there's a seminar or a conference that Gary or someone would need to go to.
Okay,
But I think that's appropriate.
all right, that's easy enough. All right, so the next is the Capital Improvement Fund. Because of having a DOT grant, wanting to do chip sealing, having to do just routine road work, I bumped the figure up to 275, and I offset that by surplus, so it would not affect the tax rate. I feel we're comfortable enough we can do that right now. You know, depending on what we put back at the end of this year, whether we can do that again next year, but I don't see it having a problem this year, and this way we can get some projects done. Because the way I look at it, you have a DOT grant in the works. If we get it, we're still gonna have to put some money up front, up to it, because it's not gonna cover the full amount. I don't want us going into debt again. So I'm figuring 75,000 towards that. 50,000 towards just your routine road work, and 125 for chip sealing, and that leaves us another 25,000 on top of that for anything else that needs to be done, or at least to start rebuilding the capital account.
How much for chip seal?
125. And if you want to make it 150, we have the 25 there. I'm still trying to find ways to beef up the capital account.
Look, we have a list of roads that if we don't chip seal within the next few years, they're going to be beyond chip seal, which means either they continue to degrade or we have to get grants, which are by no means guaranteed, or we have to come up with many multiples of what it would cost to chip seal. So my own view is the chickens have come home to roost. We've pushed off road maintenance for years because there were other things that took priority, but we have to address it now. So I think we ought to go to the 275. I think we ought to sit down with Jason, go back through that list again. With this additional amount, we may be able to include Grabowski now and get I think the top 5 roads chip sealed that we wanted to get chip sealed, instead of 1, 2, 3, and 5, or 1, 2, 4, and 5. I forget how they played out. And then hope we have a good year this year, hope some of the savings that we anticipate come through, and try to do the rest of the roads in the next year or two before they self-destruct.
I agree, and I think we ought to actually invite Jason and the engineer in for our next meeting in March to revisit the list.
I agree, because we're We want to go out to bid. We want to do it on a bulk basis, hopefully to get a better price. So we want to get as much done in one shot as we can, because we get the volume discount, if you will. Prices may have changed since he was here a few months ago, so we could ask him in advance to do some poking around and see what he thinks it's going to cost. So I agree, Terry, if we could invite Jason, and I'll talk to him, but if we could have Jason come in next month and the engineer, and let's make a decision next month now on chip seal.
Okay, well, as it stands now, what we have in the budget, we have your flat tax rate.
Are there any variables from the state that are unknown at this point?
Well, we never know what state aid is, but it's been the same for every year. So I'm going with the assumption that's going to be the same. It hasn't changed in quite a few years. I'm going to give you now the issues we're going to have with getting the budget put together is not so much East Amwell, it's the state. Last year, they tried to do everything electronically. It was a huge disaster. The only thing that went through electronically was the annual debt statement. Okay? That's been filed. I'm going to pass around a copy if you want to see it. Municipalities are allowed to have 3.5% of their equalized valuation, real property, assessed valuation. Don't ask me what that means. We're at 0.5%.
So that means there's room for more debt if we want it.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing how much debt they actually, they would say you could borrow, we could probably borrow $20 million and still be under here. You wouldn't want to, we wouldn't be able to pay it back, but we could. The next issue is the annual financial statement. That's usually already done by now. The state still has not posted the forms for us to work on. And it's a huge project. It takes weeks to complete. So that's been pushed back. It's, like I said, it's still not even out there for us to start working on. I've been trying to do paper copies until, I can't do a budget until I do the annual financial statement, because there's information in that, because the reserve fund collected taxes, which is a large line item in the budget, I have to get that there. Can't do that until after that. And then we have to wait for them to post the budget pages, which they're also going to try to do. Now, last year, they insisted we were going to do it that way. And at the last minute, they scrapped the whole thing, and everybody scrambled around and did everything on paper. So, as much as we're actually ahead of schedule, and we're working, we could have almost introduced in March. The state's not ready for us to do that, so introduction's going to be, I hope, in April, provided everything comes out.
Well, I suggest we use this as a planning budget then and just begin managing the business of the town as if this was the budget.
Yeah,
And wait for your lead on the introduction.
yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, other than small adjustments here and there, nothing's going to be drastic. Nothing's going to be, if this budget changes maybe up or down $5,000, that's about it, until we get everything settled. But other than that, we're actually in very good shape, so.
Where are we on getting the state to sign off on the Clausen House Trust Fund?
I was going to tell you that in the regular meeting, but we can talk about that now. That'll take one thing off my plate. They've approved it.
Good,
I've set it up an account.
good.
What I did is I just took $500 out of our operating budget to set the account up, and if we ever get a donation, I'll put it back in. The only thing I'm working on now is I just have to order checks. But I've got it set up into the computer system. We have an account ready to go.
So
And
this allows us to receive
money
contributions.
specifically for the Clausen House, and then you can use that to pay for things.
Is there limits to what could be paid from that? Or is it pretty much?
It's pretty much, if it's just based on, if you define the parameters that it's for the Clausen House. Now, somebody could come in and say, I'm going to donate $1,000, but I only want it used for this in the Clausen House. Then we can make it even, we can make it a little more, pinpoint exactly what they want it for. But right now, it's just like any money that comes into this can be used for anything for the Clausen House.
We are going to go out at some point soon with naming fundraiser. If you donate $5,000, you can name any of the rooms in Clausen House. There'll be certain limitations. 10,000, you can name the large double room. The naming rights would have a finite life. We drafted up a pretty detailed proposal, and that's working its way through the process. But if we were able to sell all those naming rights, we would raise around $60,000, and that would go into that trust, and that would be there to fund Clausen House expenses, heat, electricity. Jim has been very good, Jim Davidson, about getting grants for capital. The slate roof is on its last leg, so ultimately we're going to need to do something with the roof. That's not going to be cheap. Jim is going to try to get a grant for that, so hopefully we can cover the roof with a grant. I don't know if Jason talked to you. I think he's taking it out of his budget, but we're going to spend about $1,800 putting in 21 new parking spaces, because we only have 5 or 6 parking spaces at Clausen House, and well, it's now the East Amwell Museum, and we have a problem, and it's a good problem, but the attendance is off the charts. It's off the charts. At the Saturday and Sunday when it's open to the public, they're getting a lot more people than we ever envisioned. And when we have the art shows, the grand openings, we're getting a lot of people. And there's no parking. So we're going to add 21 more parking spots, stone parking, not blacktop. Maybe someday blacktop, but not now. We can't afford that, but stone. And we're going to do all the work ourselves. And we're also going to add additional lighting because it's too dark out there when people are leaving. So Jason is going to reach out to the electrician and see what we could do in the way of lighting on a cost-effective basis. To the extent we could fund any of this with grants, we will. To the extent we need to draw from the Open Space Trust Fund like we did in the fall, it's a loan and it gets paid back from the grants. So the $30,000 that was taken out of that fund in the fall is going to be put back in. Because my goal is to try to keep the Open Space Trust Fund for open space and farmland preservation and not for a lot of other things. Even though we're authorized under the new ordinance to do it, I'd rather not do it. We're looking to, well, let me step back. The tennis court at Clausen Park is self-destructing. We had to keep it closed for part of the spring because our insurance company wouldn't let us open it. The cracks were so big, our insurance company told us we had to keep it locked till they were fixed. We did a temporary fix, which is already starting to show some cracks. My goal, and I'm working with a few people on this, is to take out that tennis court and replace it with a multi-use facility. Tennis, basketball, pickleball. We could do the destruction ourselves, and we could probably do some of the groundwork for the construction ourselves, and Jason is going to go out and get estimates. But we're trying to get a grant on an annual basis so that we may have to fund this by borrowing, but we could pay it off in 5 years. And that's something I'll have to talk to you about, how we could make that work. But we need to do something, and I don't want to just tear out the tennis court and leave nothing. It would be nice to have a multi-use facility, tennis, basketball, pickleball. So Jason's going to work on getting us some estimates so we have a target. We are looking into what sort of grants are out there for parks. If we find that foundations, et cetera, will make grants for parks that are 501c3, then we'll convert Clausen Park to a 501c3. I don't want to do that yet because there are costs associated with it. Not so much up front because my firm would do it for free, but on an ongoing basis you have to file tax returns, et cetera. That only makes sense if we're going to get a benefit from going 501c3. So we're looking into that because the goal would be to make Clausen House self-funding. And I think we've made good strides in that regard. I could see that happening. I could see the East Amwell Museum becoming self-funding at some point, and then see if we can make Clausen Park self-funding through grants, and I've been talking to the Recreation Committee about having fundraising events in the park to try to raise money for the park, to get that self-funding, so we're not dipping into our open space trust fund to pay Clausen Park expenses. We have no security cameras on the building. That to me is problematic. We have people who are in here by themselves at night, working alone. We should have security cameras. To me, it's a liability issue. So I asked Jason to go out and get estimates. He got one estimate for 10 cameras, good cameras, with night vision on the outside, for just under $13,000. We have the ordinance, so the money is there. He's going to get another estimate, once we have something concrete, I'll bring it to the committee, but we were looking at putting 10 cameras, 2 in the front, cover the sides, the back, and then have cameras in here, so that we have greater security. And I have a lot of papers with me tonight, so if you'll just bear with me a second. We have a great opportunity, which we would be absolutely crazy not to take advantage of. Jason brought to my attention about a month ago, there's a state program where they'll come in and do an energy assessment of your municipal building. And they'll pay for roughly 70% of the cost to do certain upgrades. So Jason asked me, did I want to pursue it? Well, of course. So we had the assessment done, and I have the results here, and we qualified for a few things. One, to have all the lights go to LED. 2, to have a gas-fired, an energy-efficient gas-fired storage water heater. Programmable thermostats, and a few other things, pipe wrap insulation, etc. The total cost is $15,359.93. That's the total cost. The cost to East Amwell would be $4,607. Our payback period is 1.44 years. To me, it's a no-brainer. We would be crazy not to participate. We get 15,000, almost 15,400 of upgrades at a cost to us of 4,600, and our payback period is less than a year and a half. It was a no-brainer. I said to Jason, I can't imagine the Township Committee would not say, let's do it. So I believe Jason talked to you about that. Assuming everybody's okay, we should move forward that ASAP.
Quick decision.
I mean, it seemed like a no-brainer.
Is that accounted for in this budget package, or would that?
Well, basically, we had a very old ordinance for building improvements, and that would, it was, I believe, 16,000, so that would cover 13 of the cameras and almost all of that. So if we have to find $1,000 somewhere, we'll do it.
Okay.
So we're also going to start pursuing the viability of other energy efficient alternatives for the township building. I know on my own house I have solar, and the payback period on that was projected to be about 5.5 years. It looks like that's going to be pretty much right on target. So whether that's something that would make sense for the township building, I don't know. We'd have to look into it. That's a much bigger can of worms than just doing LEDs, but we'll look into that.
Well, to that point, Rick, when I was on the Hunterdon Central Board of Ed, right before I left and came here, we entered a solar power purchase agreement with, God, I forget the name of the company, but they're based out of Flemington. So I could possibly reach out to it was a consulting firm that was kind of the middleman, so they know everything. So if you guys want, I could reach out to them.
Can't hear.
Oh, your
Sorry?
microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was I saying?
You're going to reach out to them?
Yeah, I was gonna reach out, I could reach out to to that company, you guys would see fit to that.
The
Just
more
at
the
least-
merrier.
Yeah.
Speak to us.
I'm sorry.
Speak to us.
I'm done speaking.
It's close enough to her, but
No, it's not on.
It's not on, that's why. I apologize.
we're on.
Is yours turned on? Hang on.
Should be on.
Used to be a switch.
Is that working? No?
I don't think any of them are on.
Is that working?
I had to read Margaret's lips, that's what I was.
Is that working? Mayan? Is this one working?
They're turned on. I don't know. People keep playing with the buttons, and I'm like, I can't adjust the buttons.
They're not on?
And figure it out.
Kath, could you ask Matt if he could come in and see why our mics aren't working? Okay.
I know some boards just turn them down in this week's
Okay.
speaking. We used to have those notes, but hey.
The long and short of it is, I know some people in the solar industry, and I'm gonna reach out to them, so, just so everyone is on the same page. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's it for me.
Trying to think, was there anything else in terms of the budget?
I have two comments.
Go ahead.
On the Clausen House discussion, what perimeter of the land around the house will be covered by
Figure them out.
revenue? I mean,
The
how much of the actual property is?
I can take you out and physically show you, but it's the front yard, the two side yards, and basically the backyard to the end of the driveway. That's what we consider the East Amwell
Yeah.
Museum.
And then the other point is, JCP&L, can you hear us now? So JCP&L, some time ago, was generously offering a grant to
Markers
the
on
soccer
those that
club.
People turn them down. What can you do? Thank you.
So JCP&L was generously offering a grant to the soccer fields for the lighting. And unfortunately, the soccer league didn't pursue it. So we might be able to reach out to them for lighting at Clausen House and ask them if they generously look at Clausen House for that same grant money. So I think that's an opportunity to.
Worth exploring, yeah.
We have lights on Clausen House. They're not bright enough, so we're going to look at upgrading the lights on the house. There are 4 lights on the house. But we also need lights out in the parking area. It's too dark. When people leave, it's too dark. It's not safe for a variety of reasons. So we're going to work on getting that taken care of. I don't think I have anything else on
No,
money. If you don't have anything else, we'll open to the public.
That should be it.
You'll stay, though? In case, I'll
Yeah,
open to the
well,
public?
I have a, you know.
Oh, you're right, you're on the main, yeah, okay. All right, so motion to open to the public?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are open to the public for anyone who would like to get up and speak about the budget. Richie?
It's Spiegel, One Mountain Road. Try to go real fast because you're pressed for time. There's just some issues you talked about tonight. But there's one issue you asked about in the last meeting, why your recycling went down. I forget what the figure was. You said that from the state, the recycling went down, what, $1,000 or something?
That is, I was looking at that.
I remember
today.
you
That is-
asked
That
the
is,
question.
you are correct, you're absolutely correct, yes.
Wasn't
did
it
go down.
$1,000 or something?
It was about $1,000.
Usually
that
the
is correct.
reason that goes down is because your tonnage is down. That's the reason for that. We had the same problem in '05. I think ours went down a lot more. And if I don't know, Terry's gonna remember, but I think we appealed it. Whenever your tonnage goes down for recycling, your numbers go down. So that would be why you went down in your recycling, okay? The other thing is, let's go real fast here, okay? I can understand when committees want more money, but I don't know what the line item budget was for the Environmental Commission in 2018. Does anybody know off the top of their head?
1,800 for salary and wage and 700 for O&E.
Okay. My problem being involved up there for 3 years and always paying attention to the budgets is, number one, you can't use East Amwell and Raritan Township as a comparison. You got 23,000 population, and I don't know the square mileage of Raritan Township, but we're only 28 square miles. 18,000 acres of that 28 square miles is woods, all right? So that is a very bad comparison to use, all right? So that's number one. Number two is, what is our master plan up, 8 or 10 years? It is now, or it used to be 10, it's now 8?
It's up in 2023,
So it's an 8-year program now.
10.
Oh, so they went to...
The last one was 2013.
All right, that's the other thing we have. Our master programs, I don't remember getting set back from the state saying they're deficiencies. Our master plans are always, I always used to say AA, okay? So we must be doing something right. And the next thing I have is the fact that when you're approaching almost 50, when I left office, I think we were 43% preserved. I don't know what the number is right now. It's 15 years later or 13 years later, okay? When you're approaching 50% preserved, and over, when I left office, we were 460, I think it was, $450,000 off the tax books because of preserved land. Now, I've talked with the finance CFO we have here, the letter aware, know that every year in October, the last week of October, we are supposed to get an in lieu of tax check from the Department of Environmental Protection. It seems to be a program that nobody really much knows about. I mean, I've actually sat and asked the governor, one of our governors, this question. And I asked Martin, I think Tim was at that morning when we had Mike Martin at breakfast at Beaverbrook. And I asked him about the program, and he looked at me and says, "Where'd you see that?" Well, the DEP, back in 1974 approximately, put what they call, and you Google it this way, it'll pop right up, okay? DEP in lieu of tax program. It'll pop right up. It's a sliding scale program, starts at 20%. And what happens is, as you go up in preserving land, the percentage goes up, okay? I used to check with Jane Loers on a regular basis at 31st of October. I used to go in the first week in November. I'd say, "Jane, what did we get?" The idea of the program is in lieu of taxes, in lieu of what's off the tax books. At that point, the last time I remember checking, we were getting a check every October for around, I'm going to say between $23,000 and $25,000. So that's what you get for having $500,000 off the tax books, okay? So, and the other thing now I see here, I've been doing some homework lately. So the committee asking for money is fine, but I would myself be more appreciative if they could show me in dollars and cents from what all they said, using Raritan Township as an example, is, and these are up to date, am I right, Margaret? The transfers? Okay. The transfers, the Environmental Protection got a $250 transfer. October, November, we start transferring money. All right, so they got a $250 transfer here, and they actually got it from Margaret, Environmental Protection transferred, let's see, Environmental Protection, this is the transfer to line. Help me with this. I just got this yesterday, just give me a little bit. Am I reading this right? Did they get it, or they gave it out?
They got it. This line, these people
Okay.
had money transferred in, that's where it came from.
Oh, so it came from the $35,000
Yeah.
health insurance that we gave them money? Okay.
Well, actually, most of that went to tax assessor.
All right, so that was $250 that was transferred out of the, like Margaret said, the health insurance fund. Okay, and then they got another $250 that was transferred from I'm not sure again, because you got so many figures here, but my basic is they got $500.
You're talking about money being transferred to the Environmental Commission?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I followed, I have printed.
Well, what I'm saying is, and then they're asking for 500 when they already got it, didn't they?
Well, it's salaries and wages.
Huh?
That was for salary and wage. They're asking for LNG.
Well, but what I'm saying is they want 500 more. Maybe they ought to be a little more careful how they spend their pennies. And you wouldn't need it for salary if you turn around and paid more attention to how you spend your pennies. I mean, to me, that sounds a little, if you want to buy a dozen trees, buy 6.
Well, look, Rich,
You know-
we're focusing on that at every committee.
I
Like
understand
said
that.
to you,
No.
We
But as a
did a full-
taxpayer,
we did a full.
that's
court-
my job too.
We did a full, and we're taxpayers as well. We did a
Right.
full court press,
But
the
don't
planning
tell,
board.
what I'm saying is,
We're not gonna
I'm
throw
not
money
here to
away.
dispute, okay? As a taxpayer, I can offer anything I want, and I can come in here and talk about it.
No, absolutely, I'm
Okay.
agreeing with you.
Oh, yeah, okay, I don't
trying
want
to
to take your
agree with
time. Okay, I'm going to try to help you out real quick here with Clausen Park. You're going to have a problem doing what you want to do. Clausen Park was more or less my project because of my background in labor when I was in office, okay? I don't think any of you have ever looked at the approved drawings. Have you ever looked at the approved drawings for Clausen Park?
No.
Right. Once the drawings are approved and certified sealed, they can't be changed. So you're not going to be able to change anything in Clausen Park until you look at those drawings. Okay? Because the drawings do have a ball field on them. And they do have another building on them. Okay? And they do have more parking area on them. So you're going to have to ask for the drawings that were approved and certified by the state and the architect and engineering division. You can't change blueprints. You can't do it. Okay? All right, the other thing is that, well, I do understand that, and access backdrop wall, energy went down. Okay, I'm going to go to something else here. The lights in the parking lot and the lights you're talking about, you might be able to look at the situation and see where the main source of a power comes to wherever you're going to do the work. Give you an example. They put a $15,000 ordinance to put a light in the parking lot because what you were saying, the employees are working late, but that parking lot was really dark, okay?
Richie, we already found the main power source. We
You
did
don't
that
even know
last
what I'm
week.
going to say.
But no, but you said you have to find it. We found it.
Yeah, but that's not the end of the story.
Okay. I'm just telling you, we found the main
If
power
you,
source.
you want me to finish?
No, absolutely.
If you are within 180 feet of the power source, all you do is sell them the easement to put the pole on. You see that pole out there where the light is? It actually came 180 feet from that main source pole, actually came to the center of the parking lot. That's why that pole is out there with the light. JCP&L owns that pole. We sold them the easement. That's their property. And that's why we only have to pay an electric bill on that light, not $15,000 ordinance. See what I'm saying?
I do, but we don't need a pole. We have a power source close by to where we want to
Well,
put
what
it.
I'm saying, any place in the future, as a taxpayer, I hope you look at this, because it's our money you're going to be spending. If you have a source pole within 180 feet, you feed off that pole out 180 feet, you could put a main unit in and then feed off of that unit. See, when you have 40 years of construction, you know how all of that works. You know what I'm saying? The other thing is, this memo, if anybody, I wrote enough contracts in my time, okay? If anybody ever gave me this, my boss ever gave me this and said, Rich, figure this job off. Put a number on it. No way. No way can it be done.
What
I
are you
have
referring
tried.
to, Richie?
When you're talking about right there, the one
I
you
can't
asked
tell
for,
what
the road
memo.
department. The roads.
Oh,
That's
okay.
the memo you asked
I can't see
for.
the memo from here. I don't know.
Oh,
what
okay.
I can't see it.
We got something going. You can't see me and I can't hear, so I'm reading lips. All right. So, there's no way I can figure. I'll tell you what's missing here, okay? Number one, saying chip and seal costs $40,128. Is that material or is that wages? Can anybody tell me what it is? Is it material or wages? Says
I
here,
don't have the memo in front of me, I can't answer you.
I don't need the memo no more, but give it back to me, I got a lot of notes on that.
Okay.
I assume it was inclusive, but it wasn't split out.
Chip and seal column
Yeah,
is giving you figures. And at the top, it says chip and seal.
yeah.
First one, Snydertown Road, 48,000 plus. I want to know from that,
I know what the answer is, I know this memo.
okay, so now is that $48,000 for the material or $48,000 for labor?
It's,
We're getting $25 an hour. I rounded everybody off because we got somebody getting 21, somebody getting 22. We got to remember our head of the Department of Public Works is salaried. And in the profession, salary, he's non-productive. He doesn't figure in the numbers, okay? Because he's getting the salary. So what I'm saying there is, if you're paying $25 an hour, where's the hour column? How many men?
Richie, do you want me to answer your question?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Snydertown Road, the chip seal cost of $40,128 is the all-in cost to have the chip seal done once the roads are prepped. The 280 hours,
Excuse me, let's go one at a time. So what you're saying is that number is for the cost of material, chip
No.
and seal.
no, but listen to me carefully. Let me take it in the reverse direction. I'm going to take it because the columns are kind of reversed. The 280 hours is the number of hours, man-hours, that East Amwell's DPW would spend prepping the road to be chip sealed.
Well, I know that column. We're on the other column right
You
now.
with me on that?
Yeah.
The
You see my
40
figures?
the 40
Just look at it. I mean,
The 40,000.
you might be reading my figures.
The 40,128 is what we would pay the chip seal contractor to come in and chip seal that road.
Correct? Correct.
So I don't know what else you're asking for.
Well, how many men?
I don't care if it's one.
You don't care
or
how many
1,000.
men?
This is the cost to
Don't
have
say
the
that,
chip seal
please.
done.
Don't say that. You don't care how many men?
Richie,
I want to know how much work they're putting out. I want to know how many man hours they're putting out. I want to know if they're digging a ditch an hour.
who? Who?
That's the way you do contracts. That's the way you do bids.
Who, Richie? You want to know who?
Department of Public Works,
Well, I already told you, the Department of Public Works is 280 hours. The 4128 is
280 hours. What do I have
Richie.
there? What do I have there?
Richie, the 40,128 is not any cost of our DPW. The 40,128, you're not listening to me,
Oh, I'm listening.
is if we hire,
I've done it for 40 years. I'm listening.
if we hire XYZ chip seal,
Yeah, go ahead.
it would cost us, we would write XYZ chip seal a check for $40,128 to chip seal Snydertown Road.
Go ahead.
That's after our DPW spends 280 hours prepping the road.
That's what I was waiting for. Why?
Why what?
Why are they spending 280 hours to do the road? I rode every one of them roads, and I know what every one of them roads are in length and mileage. The other column that's missing there is how much of road are you going to do? Are you going to do the whole 2 miles of, what was it, Bumtown? The longest road, if I remember correctly, might have been Bumtown Road. So that's the other thing that's not here. You're telling me 280 hours. Is it for a mile of the road? For half a mile of the road? A lot of them roads that you have on there, I rode down. A lot of them are perfect. You can't put these numbers together unless you know what the footage is, what the square yards are. You can't do that. Not only that, what if I told you, I'm always used to putting that in the bid. You know why? And I'll bring 2 or 3 asphalt contractors in here. Why don't you put it in the bid? Why do we have to have the road crew spend this kind of time to prep a road? You know what it costs to rent a machine with 1 man? You've seen the sweep machines they use to prime the roads. What do you think it costs? One man, one machine, one day. And you can rent it from any contractor. Maybe some contractors might say, no, I'm too busy. $1,000 a day. Minus $1,000 a day. Okay? Minus. They told me, 3 contractors I talked to, $850 to $1,000 a day. 2 of them said to me, what are you doing? Why don't you just put it in your bed? I said, you're right. That's where it goes. And you know what you do with these man hours if you put it in the bed? Just throw it in the garbage. Throw it in the garbage. So whatever you do, don't please try to say in the way you direct your questions that I don't know what I'm talking about. I've done jobs worth millions. I did a job right in your backyard, I told you, okay? Sanitation pier on 59th Street. You know what the cost of that job was? Corbetta Steers was the general contractor on that job. You know what that job consisted of? Take a look at it. And that job was $500,000 in a hole when I took it. And when it was done, they didn't lose another penny. Because I told them, if I take that job, don't look for me to get your $495,000 back. It ain't going to happen. But I'll guarantee you this. You won't lose a penny from the day I do take it. So please.
Thank you, Richie.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're talking to the wrong guy when you're trying to talk contractors.
Anyone else? Patsy?
I'm going to stand like this because Mr. Spiegel said he can't hear. I'm Patsy Wong Iverson. And first, may I respond to a comment you made to count pennies for the Environmental Commission. Instead of buying 12 trees, buy 6 trees. So, but I'm glad you used that analogy because I just want to let you know that East Amwell will be receiving 800 free tree seedlings on May 4th, and I hope you will come to pick up your 5 free trees. So the East Amwell Commission is counting its pennies, and listening to you talk first about the East Amwell Commission and then talk about road repair, if the Township Committee were to save all the money you say that can be saved, the Environmental Commission then can request 10 times the amount for its budget. But, okay, so let me...
Hold back because I knew you were going to say it. But I don't mind.
No.
It should go to a good cause.
Yes. So I think that when you talk about penny pinching for the Environmental Commission, and I apologize for not making it here in time to hear the presentation, so I am speaking out of ignorance.
No, you're not. No.
But the East Amwell Environmental Commission is not asking for a great deal of money. I believe the commission is simply asking for the support of the township to help update the foundation for continuing to protect and preserve the township that we all love. Agree?
Oh, I agree.
Okay. I don't know if this is appropriate. You said this is about the budget. But when you were talking about the budget and you were talking about the lighting, I hope that when you look into the lighting, that you take into consideration setting up the lighting so that it is not detrimental to wildlife that's flying overhead at night. So there are ways of setting up lights so that they're not going up, but rather facing down. And I hope that you will stick with the gravel parking lot and not paving. And if you do pave, to look into porous pavement, because paving is going to increase the impervious surface. So
The good
And-
news is we don't have money to pay.
that's good. See, that's the good news.
For a surface,
But-
which is good.
But I think that those are things we need to be thinking about when we move forward. And you're talking about solar panels. What about geothermal for the municipal building? Because you're talking about gas-powered heating.
I have 5 400-foot
Right.
geothermal wells. at
That's
my
why
house.
I'm asking.
Familiar. Geothermal
And I have one.
has its own issues. It's expensive. The recovery time is a lot longer. For me to recover what I spent on the geo and the insulation, I'm figuring 13 to 17 years. So we just have to see what we can do as a township. We're going to bring in people and see what we can do. But we have to do something that's cost effective that we can afford.
But you will consider solar panels.
I think we're
if-
looking at everything.
We're looking at, everything's on the table, Patsy.
Whatever's
Everything's on the
most
There
table.
has to be a stepwise approach. We have to be
Right.
rational. We start with the
Right.
easy things that are inexpensive and work our way up the ladder, right? But point well taken. Yeah.
All right. Since I missed the presentation, did you say yes to the request for funding?
We have not made any decision.
Okay. Thank you.
Andrea?
Andrea Bonnet, 17 Ridge Road. I have a couple comments I'd like to make later about the time priorities that this township committee has exhibited. But right now, I'd like to talk about money priorities. I'd like to ask, maybe would be the right person to ask is our CFO, how much are we budgeting to resurface Ridge Road? And I understand some of that's East Amwell money, but most of it is a state grant.
Well, don't we have 2 capital ordinances.
Right.
If I remember correctly, one is for $290,000 and one is for $270,000, and I believe $445,000 of that is grant money, so the rest is what we put up.
I have to do the math here. All right, well, whatever it is, so the total cost would be roughly $660,000. If I add up 290 and 270, I get 660.
560.
Oh, 560, sorry.
560 and 445 of that is state aid.
Okay, so a little over 100,000 is taxpayer money. All right, so although I reported last fall that I had spoken to all the residents I could find at home, which was about 5 residents and myself, none of whom thought that Ridge Road needed this work. I don't know whether anybody's ever come and actually asked, other than the engineer or whoever makes these decisions. But we are now willing, the priority is we're willing to spend over $500,000, including over $100,000 of our local money. But we can't come up with $500 for the Environmental Commission. I just would like you to all take a good look at your priorities and think about what you think is really important. Thank you very much.
Barbara?
I'm Barbara Sagasser. I'm 15 Willow's Road. I'm the chair of the Historic Preservation Committee, and I just wanted to give you a little information. Excuse me. We're requesting, I think, a $200 increase, and our budget is stable, the same as last year. Our priorities and expenditures will be very similar to last year, with the exception that now we are moving the quick collection from the municipal building over to the museum. And as we do it, we are looking at the way in which we're storing it and looking at the way in which we're going to be making it available to the public and our own researchers for use. So we anticipate an increased amount of archival materials. We've already, I think, found that we needed to buy 2 rolls of the film in order to preserve our maps and our various flat items that we've now taken out. And we are working with our archival expert Alexis Antrocoli, who is advising us. We will be looking carefully at our expenditures. Where we can use less expensive things, we will be doing it. We want you to know that we do go for grants as we can. We've eliminated one of our memberships for keeping our budget lower. The one we have kept enables us to get a discount on these archival supplies and other things that we do. So we're trying to be responsible in the use of the township's funds and trying to anticipate what we will be doing in the coming year. Things are really in a state of flux now, as you see that the museum is very active, and we are getting more residents involved in dealing with the quick collection. Some of them are longtime residents who've just always been interested in it. Others are residents who've actually presented programs, and they see that we have books and ephemera, which can be very useful in producing new programs, which will be useful for the public. So I just wanted you to know that that's what we're doing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Barbara,
Yes.
the committee recognizes the value of the Historic Preservation Committee. We also recognize the dynamics between the Historic Preservation Committee, the Historical Society, and the East Amwell Museum. The request for the additional 200, to me, was a no-brainer. I have no objection to that because I know what you guys are doing. And ultimately, if you're successful in your endeavors, and I have every reason to believe that you will be, the East Amwell Museum, which used to be called Clausen House, will be self-funding. So the committee is behind you on this. It's in everybody's interest. The better you do, the better the taxpayers do. So you don't have to defend your budget. We're fine.
Thank you.
We're
I just
fine.
wanted, to make you aware and to thank you really for your support. Over the years, we've tried to shift to the society things which can be money raisers. When people wanted to have more bus trips, we said to them, well, we really have to pay for the buses. We can't accept your money. So we were able to shift all of our bus trips over to the Historical Society and get the money, and we'll continue to use the 501c3 status as much as we can to accomplish all the various things that our committee is tasked with. And plus it's fun.
And I mean, we're very appreciative of the work that you personally put in on the grant applications. I know you take the lead on the grant applications. And we've been successful. We've gotten several large grants for Clausen House, which saved the taxpayers lots of money, allowed us to avoid dipping into the Open Space Trust Fund. You guys are doing a great job. The Historical Preservation Committee and the Historical Society, you're doing a great job. I know what's going on because Jim keeps me updated regularly. Kathy, as you know, is on the Historical Society. I call her Kathy Clausen because she's at Clausen House so much. You guys are doing a great job. I have no issue with your budget at all. No issue.
This township has an amazing history, and I think that the township residents have a pride in it, and I think that additionally, the museum, as well as the park, can be a rallying point for the town,
Absolutely.
and it can be an opportunity for people who, as you know, we have so many gifted residents. They can use their gifts for the good of the community and get to know one another, and it's all good.
Yeah, we had Fred's art show. We're going to have John Buckwalter's mother.
Yes.
We have a great exhibit now. I know, because we bought 4 of the photos, and I'm getting a 5th one. They're beautiful photos. It's working out wonderfully. You guys are doing a great job. You don't have to come here to defend anything. Just come here and share with us the accomplishments, because they just keep coming. Thank you. Anybody else? Tony?
Tony Roby, 144 Lambertville, Hopewell Road. I just wanted to make a couple of points about, I wasn't here when the, early enough, but anyway, I just wanted to say something about the ERI request of the Environmental Commission. One thing I heard since I got here was that we do redo the master plan for the township every 10 years. That's sort of a state requirement, and it sounds sort of sensible, because things change over 10 years. Now, environmentally, things don't change quite as rapidly, possibly, as other things, but our ERI is like 50 years old, almost 40-some years old. It was the first big project of the original Environmental Commission headed by Ed Laporte, and I know some of the people that, I knew some of the people that worked on it. I was not a member of the Environmental Commission back then. But anyway, the report serves as sort of a bedrock for zoning and for the Environmental Commission itself, their site review committee. So they use it to they can use it to when they do site visits and assess potential development impact on the environment. And so it's useful to have something that's potentially a little more up to date than 40 or 50 years old. They haven't asked for any money for updating it for 40 years, all right? So I think it's probably about time. A lot of the work is actually, a lot of the environmental information is already in our files in various places, but it's sort of scattered. There are reports, for example, detailed reports on the mountain environment created at the time the mountain was rezoned. But the western part where the mayor lives and the valley itself have really not been updated anytime since 1970 or 72 or 3, whenever the thing was made. So that's my comments on the need for doing an ERI.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Anyone else from the public want to speak on? Oh, Francis.
Not that easy. And I will sit down because I'm old.
You could just pull the mic toward your mouth.
I've never had a problem being heard. I've had encountered problems where people didn't want me to be heard, but that's a different subject. You're at the budget time, so I'll pretty much limit to that kind of thing. I applaud a lot of what has occurred over the last year in terms of transparency. The website has minutes. You've got the video of this, you've got the audio. We have the capacity to take every meeting that every board has and have that audio so that somebody can sit at work and instead of maybe working, they can be listening in their earbuds to what's going on and stay apprised. The biggest driver of cost tends to be, and I don't know anything about the numbers here, tends to be personnel costs. Overhead, everybody gets a salary, they get hours, they do it, and every year they get 2 or 3%. And so you end up, costs go up, and in trying to keep a flat budget, which I applaud you for, becomes more and more of a challenge. I've seen other people sitting up on the dais going through the same kinds of things. Fortunately, there is technology. Some of this was discussed with you at the planning board meeting last night. It's been talked about in the halls here or there. There is a way to bring East Amwell into a less labor-intensive world. We can maybe shift over from index cards in a can for doing dog licensing, the opportunity to renew your license online or to pay your taxes online the same way you can pay your court fines online, if not that I've had any. So that there is technology that can reduce the burden on the people we have so that they can have the time and the resources to provide the services for the public and also to maybe dig through the stuff that's in the basement in the back. A lot of information pertinent to what Mr. Roby was just talking about is buried in the application from 5 or 6 years ago with the Linvale Farm, where they tried to do, they went through a long application process to get approval to do an indoor arena, and they spent $1 million on environmental and other things that included the maps of it. The county planning, master plans, and their offices have resources and maps, and they put it in theirs, and things can trickle down. Last year, and it's in your document center, I started to try to cobble together a ERI. The plan that's been talked about from 46 years ago was actually 1976, and it was a 5-municipality plan: Tewksbury, Hillsborough, Princeton, East Amwell. And there's a stack of paper about yay high that I scanned and copied, can have in a binder, pulled out into manageable things that could be put into sections of the draft report that exists that we could work on just to try to either transcribe or to plug in. The document that's on there, I already went through. It's the West Amwell ERI. And I started making changes to East Amwell and making notes and things like that. It's very early. The lady I spoke to, and I believe Lisa spoke to her also, in West Amwell, who gave us permission to use that, you know, it was a Herculean job. It took her a year, and she was pretty much the only one doing it. But she did mention that there were people at the county and things like that that could provide. So I'll wrap on that, but there are ways that we can work smarter and kinder and more efficiently. And a simple thing is putting your minutes, everybody's doing them digitally for all the various meetings, online. That reduces some of the burden of administrative kinds of things. If you can turn the machine on, you can do it. Also, there is software. It's come a long way since a former freeholder was talking about transcribing software to where it can take multi-individual conversations like this, transcribe them roughly, identify who it is, and get into something. My understanding, and it's hearsay, is that Raritan might have something like that. That can be an IT or a capital expense that can pay for itself over and over again. And I'm sure it might take some of the agita out of Terry's life, especially Pam's if you're not here, or whatever. There's other things. As the last, in addition to that, is the East Amwell Historical Museum. There's one big giant hole that we haven't thought about, and I brought it up a couple times, a couple years, you were here, Tim, about taking all of our books, minute books, going back to the 60s. I've scanned many of them with Wanda the hand scanner, and that's not pretty enough, to where the county or whatever, to where you could take over time a yearbook for whether it's planning or township committee or environmental or whatever, have them scanned, and then that becomes a digital resource that people can use not only for research or to say, you said this, Mayor Wolf, on, February 14th, 2019, but for going back to some of the phenomenal stuff that was said back in the 60s and 70s when our clerk was here and different things like that. Our present is somebody else's history. And if we can start to collect that information in digital media, then not only for ourselves, but for scholars, when it comes down to the next, the tricentennial, then some of that stuff that's occurred over the last 40, 50 years is available for somebody to research.
Thank you, Francis. Okay, we are about at 7:30, so I'm going to make a motion to close to the public. To the extent anyone else would like to chat about the budget, we could do it during the open public session on our township committee meeting. Motion to close?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, we're going to take a 2 or 3 minute break, and then we will start the township committee meeting at
Close this
7:30.
meeting. A motion to
Oh.
close.
I'll make a motion to close.
I will second.
Aye?
Aye.
Okay. All right, we're going to get started. If everybody would take their seat, please.
I'll just say in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, this is a regular scheduled meeting pursuant to a resolution adopted on January 2nd, 2019. The copy meeting notice published in the Hunterdon County Democrat issued January 10, 2019. A copy of the agenda for this meeting was forwarded to the Hunterdon County Democrat, Times of Trenton, Star Ledger, Courier News, posted on the bulletin board, and filed in the clerk's office on February 12, 2019.
All right, would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, there's an addendum because there were so many changes and everything. If you want me to read it, I'll quickly read it.
Did you give us the addendum?
Yeah.
Should be in your packet.
Did I see the addendum?
The CFO update, if there's an amended temporary emergencies appropriation resolution, so that's going to be separate in your packet. Understanding committees, there was a request from the Recycling Committee to appoint Tom Brew as a committee member at large, not the Environmental Commission member. They're low members, and Tom is interested in serving in that position if you're interested in appointing them. Under professional services, unfinished business, professional services, resolution for tax appeal attorney Martin Allen, and a resolution regarding the right tax appeal settlement, block 4001, lot 18. Under new business, we're tabling the request for the performance guarantee reduction. No information was received from the engineer. Also under new business, the 213 letter from the clerk and plans to advertise for a municipal clerk position. Under administrative reports, there is a construction log. It did come in later. And then correspondence, people have that in the back. Good to go.
I'm going to start a little out of order because I think this is very important. Terry is retiring effective April 1st.
Enjoy your life. I'll miss you. I'm Maria Condoing my life, so that explains everything. So I'm good to go. Thank you. It's been a nice 30 years, but it's time to move on.
We will do something a little more elaborate than
No,
just
I believe
this.
This is satisfactory. Thank you. I appreciate that.
But I did want to get that out there. A few announcements. I'll go through these pretty quickly. The municipal offices are going to be closed on Monday for President's Day. As I've said before, Clausen House, which is now called the East Amwell Museum, is open to the general public on Saturdays and Sundays between 1 and 4. There are free radon kits available at the Hunterdon County Health Department. The next item I want to spend a minute on, which is the East Amwell website. It is up and running. We are continuing to improve it. That is going to become the focal point for information in East Amwell. Postage is getting progressively more expensive, so we are going to cut back on doing hard copy mailings, and people can get whatever information they need off of the website. You can sign up to get alerts so that they're sent to you so that you don't even have to check it. But that is going to be the focal point. At some point, we will get something out to the public telling them that, and then we are going to cut back significantly on the paper mailings. They're expensive. They're not ideal from an environmental perspective, since a lot of that just winds up going in the garbage. So stay tuned, but we continue to work very hard on the website. That has been Allison's quest for the last year, and she's done a great job. The East Amwell Agricultural Advisory Committee's Deer Management Subcommittee is sponsoring a deer management strategy program for farmers on Tuesday, May 5th at 7 p.m. The public is invited. March, sorry. And Hunterdon County will hold a hazardous waste cleanup day on Saturday, March 9th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the library complex on Route 12. I received an email today from the county letting me know that there are going to be certain loans available to farmers who have been impacted by the heavy rain over the last year. I just got it a few hours before this meeting, so I haven't had time to read the attachments. But once I get my arms around it, we will post something on the website. Our Agricultural Advisory Committee is going to email it to all the farmers that they have on their list. And we'll try to figure out other ways to get this information disseminated to the local farmers. We will now move to the update from the CFO.
Okay, well, we actually covered most of my updates in the budget hearing as far as saying that we have the Clausen House Trust Fund set up, ready to work, and the fact the annual debt statement has been filed. So the next thing for me is my resolutions. We have a resolution that the new QPA requested us to approval for certain purchases through the New Jersey State Contracts and Purchasing Cooperative.
Terry, we just need a motion.
Yes.
Yeah, I have it right here.
I'll make a motion to move the QPA resolution.
I'll second.
Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, the next one we have is to release a check in the amount of $1,495 for a driveway performance bond.
Can I have a motion to approve that resolution?
I'll make a motion for that refund resolution. I'll second.
Any questions, comments? All in favor? Aye.
Okay, I have a resolution to do line item transfers for the appropriation reserve. So we have 2 straggler bills come in that we weren't expecting, so I need to move a little more money around.
The temporary appropriation one, yep, that's the new one.
No, this is the transfers.
Oh, the transfer.
Simon or someone.
Can I have a motion to approve the temporary emergency
No,
appropriation?
she's saying the
Other one,
transfer
Rick,
one,
first.
right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She's put them in the other order, okay.
Sorry, I was looking for my... Okay, then can I get a motion to approve the appropriation transfer?
Yeah, I'll move the resolution for the transfer approval.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I have a signature amendment resolution, removing the violation clerk as the signer and adding the Judge Martin as the signer.
Can I get a motion to approve the signature amendment?
I'll move the signature amendment.
I'll second.
Questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and the last one is the resolution to adopt a temporary emergency appropriation. This is in addition to what we've already passed as a temporary budget. One of the reasons I'm doing this is because we need more money in the housing line item because we have to send somebody to housing school, and also the snowstorms that we've had lately, we're starting to run a little low on DPW. So I'm trying to anticipate what we're going to need to get us through March.
Can I have a motion
That's the
to...
one that says 214 on the top of it, right over.
Yeah,
That's the
mine's
separate
got a
one.
big
Yeah,
X
that's-
through it.
No, they're all crossed out because after the packet was put together, there's a new one today. So it's in a separate packet. Okay.
We added a
Is it
little
this
more money to
packet?
DPW because Jason was concerned that he needed more stuff.
Oh, I see, okay.
I'm sorry, Terry.
There you go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Okay, so can I have a motion to adopt temporary emergency appropriations number 1?
Yeah, I'll move the motion on the temporary appropriations.
I'll second.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thanks.
And thanks for all the hard work on the budget.
Actually, the hard work hasn't started.
Our guest, our special guest is not here yet. So
Okay.
if you want to skip around until he shows
All
up,
right.
you have to work tonight.
All right, so we will skip over temporarily, or maybe not temporarily, depending on whether he shows up, but 6A. And we will go to 6B, which is, well, it's labeled input from the Environmental Commission, the Recycling Committee, and the public regarding the future direction of the Environmental Commission, the Green Team, and the Recycling Committee. I'd like to give a little background, and then we're going to open up to the public to talk about this topic. In January of 2017, I had mentioned that one of the things that the committee would like to achieve is a greener East Amwell. I didn't know exactly what that meant, but I figured over time we would flesh that out and figure out how we could make East Amwell greener. We spend large amounts of money, a great deal of effort, and we take a great deal of pride in our farmland and open space preservation program. And it seemed to me to be just a natural outgrowth of that we would focus on a greener East Amwell. Patsy Wong Iverson came into a township committee meeting and talked to us about a new concept called a green team, where if you formed one, the municipality could qualify for certain grants from Sustainable New Jersey. I did some poking around and recognized that those grants are meaningful and that we ought to set up a green team and start trying to pursue those grants. But that green team would also facilitate the vision of a greener East Amwell. I set up a separate green team because I felt that having a green team that was a freestanding advisory committee would show a strong commitment on the part of East Amwell to green initiatives, as opposed to having it as a subcommittee or rolled into another committee. Lisa Davis questioned me about the wisdom of that, whether we needed a separate green team or whether it should be part of the Environmental Commission. So when this year came around, I started thinking about the comment that Lisa had made and wondered whether we needed a separate Environmental Commission and Green Team or whether they could be combined in some fashion. In thinking about that, it occurred to me that we really have 3 committees that are focused on environmental: the Environmental Commission, the Green Team, and our Recycling Committee. So I kind of broadened the view to say, okay, should we be looking at all 3 of those and deciding, do we need 3 separate committees? I don't have an answer to that at this point. I don't know that this committee has an answer to that at this point. It's not an easy decision, and we decided that it shouldn't be a decision that's just made by the Township Committee, that the public ought to have an opportunity to weigh in, as well as people who are on the Environmental Commission and the Recycling Committee. There's no one on the Green Team at this point. So I asked Terry to put this on tonight's agenda so that those who are interested could come and share their views. So I'd like to, unless any of you have anything you'd like to add before we open to the public, I'd like to open this up to the public for people to share their views. There are no time limits, so feel free to share your views. I'd like to just focus the discussion on the issue at hand. We'll have another open public session to discuss anything else on your mind. But with that, I'd like to make a motion to open to the public to discuss this topic.
I'll move we open to the public.
I'll second. Oh, nope. Either one.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, would anyone like to come forward and share their views about this? Sure, come on up.
Good evening, Mayor and Committee. My name is Mary Lou Ferrara. I'm the Vice President of the Board of Trustees of the Sauerland Conservancy. We're working obviously with you on the heliport, and we share many of the same concerns of making East Amwell greener, clearly. Our mission is to preserve, promote, and protect the unique character of the Sauerland region. And as part of that, we think an actual environmental commission, as envisioned by statute, is critical to promoting what you're talking about. Removing the statutory environmental commission from your ordinances removes the power of the environmental commission to automatically have one member be a part of the planning board. And that statutory power in the hands of someone who sees the township from an environmental view is, in our opinion, really, really critical to your ongoing efforts to improve the environment. We don't see any reason why you couldn't merge the green team, excuse me, sorry, the green team and the recycling team, and all. We have a green team in Hopewell Township. It's very effective. But the statutory power created by the state giving you the environmental commission's access to always be a member. It's not that it's not that there may be a member of the planning board of the environmental commission on the planning board, but there shall be a member of the environmental commission on the planning board. And we think that's really critical going forward as you proceed to make East Amwell a greener township. So thank you for your time.
May I ask a follow-up question? So the green team is created via an ordinance?
The green team can be created via an ordinance or a resolution, as far as I'm aware, but...
Well, I had a question.
Oh, sure.
No, I'm sorry. I wasn't asking for...
Oh.
So we created our green team with an ordinance. If that ordinance were to be amended to state that a member of the green team is a member of the planning board, such as the environmental commission, would that address that issue?
Well, your ordinance states that a member of the environmental commission shall be a member of the planning board. And that's just required. So you could have a member of the green team be on the planning board, and then you could have that person, the mayor is the person who chooses, be the planning board, the environmental commission designee on the planning board. But there's no reason to remove the environmental commission, which you've had for, I think, 20 years as part of, longer than that, way longer. And it's such an important part of the planning process and maintaining a green focus. So.
My question was, if we didn't have an environmental commission, but we as a township committee created a green team, and in that ordinance said there shall be a member of the green team on the planning board, doesn't that affect?
That's possibly true. The statutory framework for planning boards is created by the state, as you know. I don't see that there would be any reason that you wouldn't be able to do that, but it's not as firm of a commitment, right, as having the environmental commission, which has been created by the state as a party to your planning board by state statute in terms of how environmental commissions are set up. Towns that have a weaker environmental system have environmental committees or green teams, but that reduces the power and effectiveness of the environmental committee. I may leave it to your attorney to say whether or not, you could say, by ordinance, we're going to have a rule that no other township has, that we're going to appoint a member of the green team. But why would you do that when you already have the ways to do that that's already set up by statute?
I'm just asking.
No, that's our position. So thank you for your time.
Tony? I'm sorry, I'll get you next. I didn't see you standing up, I'm sorry.
Tony Roby, 144 Lambertville, Hopewell Road.
Tony, you could sit if you'd like.
Pardon?
You could sit if you'd
Oh,
like.
I'm okay. I don't want to talk that long.
Okay.
I'm trying to limit myself. If I keel over, then you can go on to the next person. This Sustainable New Jersey program reminds me of a previous state program that sounded like a great thing. It was called Smart Growth. Everybody remember Smart Growth? They gave grants out. People got grants. There was in fact, the Sauerland Conservancy sort of came out of that Smart Growth program because there was an alliance between ourselves and 4 other townships on the mountain and attracted some money and was spent well spent. But Smart Growth has disappeared. It lasted about 10 years. And that's what I would say the meantime that Sustainable New Jersey handing out money is going to last, and then they'll be on to a new fad. So this is creating a permanent committee with Sustainable New Jersey in mind, I don't believe is a good idea. The Environmental Commission has been around for 45 years or so, and every township in Hunterdon County and Mercer County, as far as I know, has an environmental commission. We would sort of look like we didn't care about the environment. It's sort of bad PR to get rid of your environmental commission. And it also removes a possible restraint on development, because the environmental commission people, some of them at least have training in looking at proposed developments and looking at the ERI or master plan or environmental facts about a specific tract of land where development is proposed. They're not just anybody you pluck out of the living room, but their master organization, ANJAC, does training of environmental commission members and how to look at sites, what to look for when a developer comes along. And they're looking at it from the point of view of the benefit of the township. The developer has environmental experts too, but they're looking at it from the viewpoint of making money. That's what the capitalism is. That's what development is, making money. So you have 2 sets of people looking at a piece of land with different points of view. You're going to get different results. And the planning board has to choose between those points of view. That's their job. And so I think it would be a very poor idea to get rid of the Environmental Commission. Now, what you can do about a green team, it's going to last maybe 5 or 10 years would be my guess, the sustainable program. And you could make it a committee of the Environmental Commission, or you could make it an ad hoc committee as you propose doing. But ad hoc committees cost money because they have to hire a secretary, or you rely on the people themselves to somehow take notes, and you're not going to get that many volunteers if somebody has to actually do the normal secretarial functions of a committee. So when you create a new committee, you create a cost, and you have to ask yourself, is this the most cost-effective way to do it? Or can we use the environmental structure that we already have and create this ad hoc subgroup called the Green Team as part of that? Is that a more efficient way to do it? That's the question I think you people should be asking yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before we have our next speaker, I just wanted to clarify a point or two, because Tony made a number of good points. The Green Team was not put in place solely to get grants for sustainable Jersey. The Green Team was put in place for a much broader purpose. And the statute that governs environmental commissions does not give the Environmental Commission particularly broad powers. The ordinance that we drafted for the Green Team gives the Green Team very, very broad powers in terms of environmental issues. The Green Team isn't designed to go away if Sustainable New Jersey goes away. Sustainable Jersey is really just a component of the Green Team. And the reason we called it the Green Team instead of calling it something else was because Sustainable Jersey wants to see Green Team in the name of whatever's applying for the grants. So we chose the name Green Team for that reason, but the Green Team is designed to go on forever. And it has a very, very broad mandate, broader than I think the powers of the Environmental Commission under the relevant statutes. So I just wanted to clarify that this isn't something that goes away when Sustainable Jersey goes away. And one of the reasons I didn't want to roll it into the Environmental Commission was, as I said earlier, I think it shows a greater commitment and perhaps gives us a better chance of getting grants. But two, I wanted it to have great latitude when it came to environmental issues, and I didn't want it to be constrained by the statute that governs environmental commissions. So I just wanted to clarify that. The gentleman in the back.
Thank you very much. My name is Mike Pissarro. I am the Policy Director for the Watershed Institute. You may know us as Stony Brook Millstone Watershed Association. We've been around for 70 years working in central New Jersey, of which West Amwell has a little portion of it. And Mr. Mayor, I want to commend you.
Would you repeat your name? I didn't.
Sir, it's Mike Pissarro. It's P-I-S-A-U-R-O. And I was going to say, Mr. Mayor, I want to commend you. The Green Team is important. I used to be on the Hopewell Valley Green Team, which is a combination of Hopewell Township, Pennington Borough, and Hopewell Borough. Green Teams are important. With the Watershed Institute, we are working with Sustainable Jersey on model ordinances. The stormwater model ordinance that came out last July, we were part of that process. And I think that is a great process. I think that is a great model and does provide a lot of opportunities. Keeping East Amwell green is amazing. I have friends who live in this town, and I've enjoyed the resources of this town, and keeping that continuing is important. Fully supportive of a Green Team, but also an environmental commission is important. It is meaningful, as Mr. Roby mentioned. ANJAC has trainings. They also have grants. Provides a lot of resources. It is. I've worked with environmental commissions throughout the 25 towns in one way, shape, or fashion, and they've provided a wealth of resources, from organizing stream cleanups to working with us on educational programs for the citizens in Princeton and Montgomery and Hightstown and other places, which a Green Team can do. But one of the things that an environmental commission is statutorily authorized to do is to review development applications. And that expertise, the training that you can get through ANJAC, which I'm not sure you can necessarily get through just a Green Team, is invaluable. We find it as a useful resource to provide us notice of development applications that sometimes we might want to look at. It's sometimes very hard for us to be in 25 towns in zoning boards and planning boards. So an environmental commission sometimes is I don't want to say an early warning system, but at least allows us to look at it and say, there's a concern here and we can help. Our job is not always to say no, but to help the environmental commissions, the planning boards, and the applicants to look at the resources, and is there a way to accomplish the goal while protecting the streams, the wetlands, the forests. We were, East Amwell's EC reached out to us on the helipad, and we were able to provide some comments on that. And I know that was a particular concern. So I think having a environmental commission is extremely important. I think having a green team is extremely important. Whether they are the same, in many towns, a lot of the same people are on both committees. Sometimes they are one and the same. It's the EC and the green team are really one and the same, but it's the environmental commission. And Princeton and Lawrenceville, they're completely separate entities. But I would really urge this committee to continue the strong powers of the EC to review development applications, provide guidance. And I know developers sometimes, not all of them, but sometimes appreciate having that discussion with the EC on applications. And they can make tweaks, they can make modifications that would improve the project and maybe allay some of the concerns of the residents. And if there's anything we can do as an organization to help with your discussions and thought process and going forward, we'd be more than glad to have that. So I'd like to thank you for this opportunity, and if you have any questions.
I just have one follow-up. You mentioned that ANJEC training and grants are available to the EC.
Yes.
Would they be available to other organizations?
I cannot speak. I don't necessarily believe so, but I know they do have trainings for EC members. They run them every spring, and they do them in the north, and the central, and the south portions of the state. I do know they have some grants. I don't know that those would be available to a green team in and of itself. Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Do you have a view regarding whether it's better to have a separate green team or to roll it into the Environmental Commission? I don't want to put you on the spot, but
I don't necessarily believe one way is better than the other.
Okay.
There are some environmental commissions, because of the development pressures in the community, that are extremely busy. And so their agendas and schedules may not allow for additional things. And others, like I said, they're populated by a lot of the same people. Princeton has a completely separate incorporated entity, and I believe Lawrence Township does as well. They have a slightly different focus sometimes, but they both are extremely valuable.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Well, let's see how many more we have.
How many more people want to speak?
Okay, maybe we should then. We skipped, we might just take a pause for one moment because I don't want to subject Gregory to sitting there. So maybe we'll just, if you don't mind, we'll take a pause for a few moments and present him. I'm very fearful that I'm going to mutilate your last name. Can you help me?
I'm used to it.
Venicial? Veniciali.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you like.
I don't think there's an E at the end.
Venicial. Okay, thank you. All right. Sure, come on up. That way we can all see. Right there. Take a seat. I'd like to introduce the following resolution. Whereas the Township Committee of the Township of East Amwell recognizes Gregory F. Venicial for his tremendous accomplishment of achieving the rank of Eagle Scout, Scouting's highest and most prestigious honor, on November 20th, 2018. Whereas Gregory, a member of Boy Scout Troop 65 of the Washington Crossing Council, BSA, will be recognized with an Eagle Scout Court of Honor held at the Flemington Moose Lodge in Flemington, New Jersey on March 23, 2019, to be attended by his family, Boy Scouts of all rankings, distinguished leaders, and community representatives. Whereas East Amwell, while recognizing all of Gregory's accomplishments in reaching this plateau, has benefited tremendously from his Eagle Scout project of rebuilding an outdoor display for the Black River and Western Railroad Historical Trust at the Ringo Station in East Amwell, which included planning and building a display that has provided enjoyment for many. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee members of the Township of East Amwell that they hereby honor and express their sincere gratitude to Gregory F. Veneciao for his significant contribution to the community and for his exciting accomplishment of obtaining the Boy Scout of America's prestigious Eagle Scout Award. And be it further resolved that on behalf of all citizens of East Amwell Township, they wholeheartedly extend best wishes to Gregory in all his future endeavors. By order of the Township Committee. Framed copy of the resolution I just read. Thank you. Thank you. It's quite an accomplishment. Oh, sorry. You will hold. Wait. Good.
And I might mention that Gregory is Sue and Carl's grandson, Kristen.
Oh. I'm sorry. Okay. Before you leave, Gregory, I want to just make a motion to adopt the resolution that I read and presented.
I would like such motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. It is now official.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to the show.
I'm glad you, because I hate to make them sit. Okay, back to where we were. Andrea?
Thank you.
Grandparents.
Congratulations.
Oh, you're his grandparents?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Well, congratulations.
You've been outed.
Be careful, I was Eagle Scout once too. I went out being a lawyer for a local government.
All yours. Fire away.
Just as I'd just like to mention, as a former member of our Environmental Commission many years ago and chair of it for a couple years, I'd just like to give an example of the importance of environmental data, which is something that has been brought up tonight already several times. When I was on the Environmental Commission in the early 1990s, we received an OES grant, that's the New Jersey Office of Environmental Services, for a proposed, somebody wanted to do a proposed cluster development. So we got an OES grant to evaluate disposing of the wastewater for this development. And the conclusion in the grant at the time, which I think I have a copy of in my multitudinous files, by Ed Clerico of Applied Wastewater at the time, was that it couldn't be done, not even close. There just wasn't anywhere to safely dispose of applied wastewater anywhere near where that cluster development was proposed. So about 10 years later, I was mayor of East Amwell, and we were sued by the New Jersey Farm Bureau because we downsized the valley section of East Amwell Township. One of their experts was the very same expert, Ed Clerico, that we had hired to answer really pretty much the same question about disposing safely of wastewater for large-scale developments. However, when he presented his conclusion, it was diametrically opposite. He said it would be wonderful and it would be very easy to dispose of the wastewater, treated wastewater. So the judge was kind of blown away because we then presented Mr. Clerico with his original statement, and our attorney Howard Cohen asked him to read his conclusion from 10 years before, and I think it was a little embarrassing for poor Mr. Clerico. But in her decision, which I do have a copy of, Judge Helen Hones, referring to Mr. Clerico's contradictory statements, point out that soils that are good for agriculture are generally poor for septic systems, and soils that are poor for septic systems are generally poor for septic wastewater disposal. So the Farm Bureau lost all counts. I think there were 39 counts, and they lost all of them in this lawsuit. So I'd just like to point that out. It's just an example of what an environmental commission can accomplish. Now, related to that, I'm still trying to figure out, and maybe I haven't been to enough meetings or something, but I'm hoping that you guys will put something online, a real description and an explanation of what is a green team. All I can get tonight is that it's going to make the township pretty, which I certainly think is very desirable, but I don't think making it pretty is quite enough. So maybe you can put something online, maybe a description.
It's in our ordinances, there's a detailed description.
And is it online?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. So we would look it up under
Green Team.
Green Team on the website. Allison?
If you go to the quick links at the bottom, go into the ordinance book, the code book,
And that does tell what the tasks of the Green Team are. Great.
It does, and there's also, in the original ordinance, I had whereas clauses that explained it as well. I can get you the original ordinance with the whereas clauses. I can send it to Terry, who can forward it to you.
And I think I'm not alone, but I think a lot of us are trying to understand how a Green Team is different, better, equal.
I'll post the original ordinance on the
Okay.
website tomorrow, so you can pull it off there. But I'll also have Terry email it. You have her email address? I'll have her Terry email it to you.
Great, thank you very much.
Sure.
So I just have a related question. Why would the ordinance in the ordinance book not have the original whereas clauses?
Because the ordinance, the whereas clauses aren't the law. The whereas clauses are really something just for introducing the ordinance.
But they give it context.
It's not in that.
I don't know, that's,
Tim, you want to change the way laws are written?
no, I'm just, I mean, it seems an important piece of information to have.
Well, if anybody wants to see that, and I have in conjunction with the Hellestop, you just get the original ordinance. We would have Krista or Terry send me the original ordinance.
I'm not challenging you on this. Right?
No, I'm just telling you that with laws, you don't get the whereas clauses, you get the law.
It is online, under whereas, so it is available.
It's on, we have it on there already? Good,
The
good.
codification, usually, I send the ordinances to the codification company, and they usually publish, they put it in the code, and if there's whereases, they were usually in there. Let me just explain, just so that the committee knows. We codify whenever we have enough money to do it. We don't do it every year, but we did past year. But anything that's not in the code book, as I explained to you yesterday, will be under new laws, which are right next to the code book. So and I know like 18, I don't know what number we started through, 1822, are online. They're just not in the code book, but at the same place, so.
So do we have an ordinance now adopting a Green Team?
Yes, we do. We do, yes,
Okay, so it is on.
we do. Gloria?
My name is Gloria Ann Roby. I reside at 144 Lambertville Hopewell Road. And I'd like to speak to the educational value of the Environmental Commission. They have held through the years many events, seminars to better inform residents as to the value of our greenery here. And in particular, I'd like to remind Mr. Wolf, 3 years ago, when you were a newly arrived resident of East Amwell Township, in the spring of 2016, you attended an Environmental Commission educational program on conservation and stewardship. The speaker mentioned a number of times the value of bees. And you stood up and you asked, why are bees important? Why are bees important? So, thanks to the Environmental Commission's program, you learned that bees are pollinators, a fact you did not know. Bees are recognized as important pollinators. Without bees, people, we would have less chocolate and no strawberries on Valentine's Day. So, the presence of bees in an agricultural community is of special importance to farmers as well as those who own farmland. Fortunately, now you know the value of bees as pollinators, and hopefully you recognize this fact in your stewardship of the 3 farmland parcels you own in the township, 2 of the properties having preliminary major subdivision approval.
I have to say, for the life of me, I don't remember ever attending that. Kath, do you remember me ever? I don't remember. And I know that bees are pollinators, so I don't ever remember standing up and asking.
There are a few people in the audience.
There's a few people named Wolf in the town, too.
There are.
It's wonderful. The important thing is stewardship. And you do have land that has major subdivision approval on it. And so we would hope that you would be cognizant of the value of bees.
But just to be clear, I bought the land. I did not have the land subdivided. In fact, I bought one of the 3 parcels which was already subdivided so that it would not be put into houses. In fact, when the Farmland and Open Space Commission or committee refused to buy the parcel, I reached into my own pocket to buy the parcel, just to be clear. So I do understand stewardship. And by the way, on the 13-acre parcel, there is a beehive. The resident has a beehive on the 13-acre parcel. So I do understand the value of bees. Anybody else want to speak? Lisa? And by the way, you can pick up from where you left off earlier. We were getting short on time, but you're welcome
And then
to
we got very
continue.
long on time. Yeah. So no, thank you. I think the ERI has been discussed enough, and for Kevin and Mr. Miller, I did drop off copies of sort of denser versions of the comments I made. If you want to talk to me about it afterward, I'd be happy to. So I have to say I'm very glad that we're having this discussion. I'm glad it's a public discussion. I'm glad that so many people are here to contribute to it. This is a continuation, I think, of a discussion that started back in September, and so I do want to just sort of, I want to sort of correct something that you said, Mr. Wolf. I wasn't questioning the need for a separate green team, ever. The idea for creating a green team was something that we on the Environmental Commission were very excited about in several discussions that resulted in Patsy's proposal for creating a green team. None of us ever imagined that the green team and the Environmental Commission would be the same thing. None of us imagined that the green team would be part of the Environmental Commission. These are things we discussed in September and that I tried to clarify then, so I'm just going to do it again now. What we actually had proposed what Patsy had proposed at the, I think it was the July meeting last summer, was a green team that had quite a wide membership, and I have some notes from what she actually I think gave you as a set of suggestions, that the new green team would have maybe a couple of members, 2 to 3 members of the Environmental Commission, partly to facilitate communication between Environmental Commission and the new green team, but then also representatives from the Planning Board, Parks and Recreation, Board of Health, Ag Advisory, Recycling, Township Committee, FOSPIC, Historic Preservation. So pretty wide. In addition to a number of local farmers who were pursuing environmentally progressive practices, members of owners of local businesses, and including then also maybe representatives. There were suggestions, Jersey Central Power, Princeton Hydro, Zone 7, and a number of other organizations that had some kind of interest in greening the municipality and the region. So that was the form of the proposal that came your way. I think it does accurately represent what a number of us on the Environmental Commission imagined as the form of the Green Team. What I was questioning at the September 13th meeting was not the need for a Green Team, which I fully supported and celebrated and was looking forward to, but rather the need for the Green Team to take the form of a town committee in the way that the ordinance was written. And the reason I had that concern was that I was afraid that if the Green Team took the form of a town committee, that it would be harder to gain momentum, it would be harder to attract volunteers, it would be slower to act because, as we all know who serve on town committees, there are lots and lots of requirements about how business is conducted. And so the Green Team would have to have regular public meetings. Those meetings would have to be noticed. Business could only be conducted if there were a quorum. There are all kinds of constraints that the form of a town committee places on members that might be unnecessary and unwelcome for a Green Team. So that's why I was raising the question, why the form of a town committee? Mr. Matthews, you actually answered that question for me. You said that you were trying to give the Green Team a more durable form over time and some sort of increased accountability that ad hoc committees and other kinds of groups sometimes don't have, which I took as a reasonable answer to the question. But I still retain the concern that as an additional town committee, the Green Team is competing for budgetary resources and also competing for volunteers. And I wonder if there's a way that the Green Team could take a different kind of form that would allow it to have the same kind of broad membership that you imagined for it when you wrote the ordinance, but that would liberate it from some of the constraints that might make it, that it would have as a town committee, that might make it more appealing to volunteers, might make it possible, for example, for members of other committees to also make the commitment to be on the Green Team, which would be hard to do if it's another town committee that takes up as much time as service on another town committee. I just wonder if you could maybe potentially rethink the town committee as the form for the Green Team and think beyond that. I think that there are a lot of people in this community who would be delighted to become active on a Green Team that might pursue some of the projects that and activities that are specified in the ordinance that could potentially be part of the Environmental Commission's purview but don't have to be. There are certain issues that have to be under the Environmental Commission's purview, like site review, like public outreach, like the ERI. So there are certain things that the Environmental Commission is, in a sense, mandated to do by its enabling legislation. That's not the case for the Green Team. The Green Team could have a much wider scope for that reason. But I think giving it the form of it, this is the position I took at the September 13th meeting, and I still take it. I think that form creates redundancies, but it also creates competition. And I don't think that serves anybody's interest. I think we want to have synergies rather than competitions. So that's my view. You may well disagree with it, but that's speaking from my experience, my limited experience, serving for a year and change on the Environmental Commission. I think the Environmental Commission, as long as we have full membership, can be very effective doing the activities that we are mandated by our enabling legislation to do. But I think we could have great synergy with a Green Team that took some other form. So as for recycling, I don't know, maybe there's some folks from the recycling committee who might be willing to speak to how they fit into all of it. Of course, the Environmental Commission has undertaken quite a bit of recycling, and there's been some, so I don't know, it might make sense to think about a combination of recycling and Environmental Commission. Those seem to be very clear synergies to me. But in any case, I guess I'd like to get a clearer sense from you, if you have one, of what you're imagining might be the future form of the Environmental Commission and Green Team. I mean, where you see this reorganization heading. If we had more specific ideas to respond to, we might be able to give you more helpful feedback.
Well, is there anyone else in the public who has comments?
Right now we're just looking to get feedback from the public.
Okay. All right. I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think I saw two hands.
All right, so I'll just work my way around. Anybody over here? Okay, in the back, moving forward. Patsy?
Patsy Wong Iverson. I didn't state it earlier, 55 Wagner Road. I think that I would appreciate knowing what's in your minds and to be able to respond to it. But I don't know of any communities that in creating a green team eliminated the Environmental Commission. And Mr. Pizarro mentioned Sustainable Princeton, which works closely with the Environmental Commission in the township. What's interesting about Sustainable Princeton is it's a 501c3, and it receives $35,000 from the township as a contractor to carry out activities different from the Environmental Commission. But I do know that the two entities do work together. Lawrenceville Township also has a Sustainable Lawrenceville that works in conjunction with the Environmental Commission. And as Mr. Pizarro pointed out, there is a multi-township green team. Hopewell, Pennington, and, okay, Hopewell Township, Hopewell Borough, and Pennington. So they work across the three communities. And I'm actually on their email list, and they send out activities. So I see well, I don't think of competition, and maybe it will be difficult to populate both the Environmental Commission and the Green Team, but first we need to publicize. The fact that there were people in the audience who were unaware the ordinance exists. It's what I always say, just because you build it doesn't mean they come, unlike the Field of Dreams. So there's the need to be publicizing the existence of the Green Team and also publicizing the Environmental Commission and publicizing the Recycling Committee, because the Environmental Commission and the Recycling Committee, I believe Allison would agree, have worked together pretty well on the Trex project. And the Recycling Committee has now taken that over. But people who have participated have stepped forward to say, we'll continue to work on this, which means we're building the base, increasing the number of people. So I envision the Environmental Commission and the Green Team in whatever form to be working together and also on separate issues. As Lisa pointed out, conservation easements are the responsibility of the Environmental Commission. And so I think what I would like to see the Township Committee do is solicit more ideas for how the three entities can work together more effectively in the future, because we know with recycling there is a need to be educating and encouraging people not just to recycle, but to refuse, reduce, reuse, and then recycle, and to put East Amwell on the map as a township that's taking the lead. For example, we have achieved 1,000 pounds. So Kirkpatrick Memorial Presbyterian Church reached the second 500 pounds. DPW has stepped forward to take the leadership for the third, and Allison said that Living Waters will be the fourth, after which the Recreation Committee or the Grange. So groups are coming forward. We are pulling plastics out of the waste stream, but that's just a very small example of what this township can accomplish. And my own feeling is synergy and not elimination or competition. Thank you.
Anyone else? Richie?
No, born and raised in the area, raised in Princeton. My aunt had a small farm on Cold Sore Road in Lawrenceville. And as children, there was no such thing as hanging around the house. We were raised to live outside and appreciate nature, you know? And sometimes I think the most obvious is the most overlooked. My mom always used to say, you know, take care of Mother Nature and she will take care of you, you know? And so the thing is, I always felt that, I mentioned before why your grant came down because of tonnage. You know, we have the pickups at the end of the month in the parking lot, you know, and you know, in today's world, when you got both side family working, a lot of them don't have time to get there on one particular day. So I couldn't understand. I tried this back then. I think we should look into buying our own dumpster, keep it up in the grit yard, where people, just like they bring their brush, would be able to bring their recycling material when they have time available. And then you would increase your tonnage. I really think so. Because I know my neighbor would say, you know, you going down to the, I said, well, why? Well, I got to go to New York today. Or the same thing with the county, you know. But I think if we had our own, maybe we can even reach out to these, you know, recycling and ask if they got a dumpster they might want to donate. You don't have to get a big, you get a 45-footer, one for plastic, one for tin, or, you know, we always had the 55-gallon drum that we filled with batteries inside the building. I don't know if they're still doing that. But, and the other thing is, one of the first recycling facilities I ever worked on, to give you an idea, 1969. I think it was probably, they said, I remember my business agent saying something, it was something new. And that was in Westfield, New Jersey. It's on the borderline of Westfield and Clark, the recycling. Put that in 1969, okay? And then I remember after that, being that my aunt did live in Lawrenceville, is when they put the one on Princeton Pike in Lawrenceville. You ever been in there? You ever been in there? Well, we should reach out to like Lawrenceville or some of these communities. I mean, we all see Raritan's down there. Personally, it's a sore eye. You ride by Raritan's recycling, all you see is tanks and this and that. You know, but you ride by Lawrenceville's, you don't know what's there. You ride by Clark and Woodbridge, you don't know what's there. And I think if we were to reach out that way and think outside the box a little bit, we could bring money in and let Mother Nature bring it in for us. I think the same thing that we just mentioned. East Amwell could be, because we're so environmentally sensitive and conscious, we could be the model community not only for the county, but for the state of New Jersey. If we start showing people that you can let Mother Nature provide for you. We've been providing for her for a long time. So that's something I always had on my mind. And if you want to know what I really had on my mind, I can go further and tell you exactly some other issues in town that we could make this work.
Thank you.
Francis?
Maybe I should change that to Hobbit to be more relevant. Francis Gavigan. I share many of the statements of folks here. I've also been on the Environmental Committee and the Planning Board for a year and a bit, and I see the value. I don't know the origins, and I have no idea what's in your mind, but I do suspect that trying to be fiscally responsible and efficient at this time of year when you're trying to keep the tax rate flat and to be reasoned might be a factor in that. I personally, and I've said this before, I do not see value in eliminating the Environmental Commission. I spent a Saturday compliments of Anjac last year and learned a tremendous amount of stuff that was then brought back on little thumb drives that we can put on the website if it isn't there somewhere. Anyway, to where people can learn for themselves, whether if we can get grants from Anjac or support from other municipalities, I think there's value to it. This would be the first year you'd be trying to have a green team. You'd be able to go for your grants. And it strikes me that just as we were speaking an hour ago to Barbara Sagasser about the synergies between the Historic Preservation Committee and the Historical Society, with a few exceptions, the membership is the same. And I suspect that that might be a factor in your green team. What was new to me was hearing that Pennington and Hopewell Borough and Hopewell Township have a green team. Well, we have neighbors up here too. We don't know whether or not there is any local interest in having a locally focused function along this line, where there would then be cost savings and efficiencies. You wouldn't be paying 3 secretaries or budgets. There'd be, just like this court, a cost share. And there might be more of a pool of people who might have the expertise, like Joe Angelone has, and other things like that. So I would say keep it, do your green team, try it, and see about if there's ways of doing it efficiently. And there would be synergies with that and overlap. What Rich just said, I'm confusing my R's. I think every weekend, West Amwell has a dumpster and people come and they bring their garbage. There might be a possibility of seeing if there could be a East Amwell access to that for recycling materials or not. I'm not sure. The worst that happens is they say no, and then you have a way of getting more stuff out of the environment. You may not get more tonnage so that you get money, but that's not really, the purpose of it. I do think that we can be more creative in efficiencies, and I won't repeat them because I'll be repeating them next month and the month after that, and all that other fun stuff. But, it's a great discussion. The turnout is far more than you see for a lot of things, except for maybe the Hella stop, or, different things in that regard, or solar farms. That's good. You're communicating, you're getting input from people, and I can't see that that's a bad thing. And hello to wherever the camera is, whatever. It's a good town, it's getting better, and we're all having growing pains, and we're going to have a major growing pain after March or whatever. And people just do the best they can, and if they play nice and work with one another instead of undermining one way or the other, whether from one side or the other, and please God, leave the politics out of it, we'll all do better. So,
Thank you.
Great discussion. Leave the Environmental Committee alone.
Thank you. Tony, you can come forward again, or speak from that wherever you'd like
I'll
to.
speak from here.
Okay.
I just have a quick, I've heard now twice the hypothetical idea of the Environmental Commission getting a grant from Anjac. We did get a grant from Anjac. We got $2,000 to build the trail in the Youngman Preserve. It's built. The Scouts did a project. We have a kiosk because of them. The Scouts are helping maintain that trail. That's another fact people may not know. So we have an NJAG grant already in hand. We applied again, and they said it's too soon to give you another one. Now, I haven't been on the Environmental Commission since, but now a couple of years have elapsed.
Well, there was an application last year. Patsy can speak about that.
Okay, but anyway,
yeah.
keep trying, because.
They weren't ready yet, but we are.
We have done it.
Yeah.
Can I follow up with you, Mr. Roby?
Thank
I have a question for you.
Oh, yeah.
Would that ANJAC grant be available to another committee in East Amwell, or is it exclusive to an
No, it's
environmental?
for Environmental Commission. ANJAC stands for Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions, period. Environmental commissions, not planning boards or recycling committees or anything like that.
Okay.
If I may, Mayor, I texted the executive director of ANJAC. ANJAC grants are only for environmental commission.
That seems right, yeah.
That's what I thought, but I
That
wasn't
seems-
100% sure.
Okay, if there are no other comments, I'm going to have a motion to close to the public.
I'll make a motion to close.
I will second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Before moving on, because we had this public hearing, and I'm very glad that we had this public hearing, because we got some really good ideas. And this has helped me focus a lot more, and I think to the extent we have thoughts, we ought to discuss them now, in front of everybody. First, Francis, I love the idea of exploring a multi-jurisdictional green team. I had lunch with the mayor of West Amwell a couple of weeks ago, and he very much would like to do things with East Amwell where we could achieve synergies. I have a number of friends on the committee in Delaware Township who had also indicated that they would like to work together to increase synergies. So I'm going to reach out to the mayor of West Amwell, the mayor of Delaware Township, and take their temperature on this and see if they'd be interested in doing a combined green team. I think that's a great idea. I mean, I think that's a really good idea.
Occasionally I have them, folks.
My own personal view, having heard what everybody had to say, is we ought to keep a separate environmental commission. I don't think we ought to be looking to merge the green team with the environmental commission or vice versa. I think we ought to keep a separate environmental commission. Recycling, they have a lot on their plate, and I've been having discussions with Allison about expanding the types of recycling our recycling committee does to some of the non-traditional. We're doing that at my firm, like batteries. You can bring batteries into the office. We have recycling facilities for batteries. By the way, we also outlawed straws in my firm. There are no more drinking straws. You can buy the chrome ones, but there are no more drinking straws. And I'm now on a tear about these fancy plastic cups that we use when we have clients in. They're thick plastic and they wind up going in the garbage, and that doesn't make me very happy. So that's kind of my next project. But I think we ought to keep recycling separate. It kind of brings me to the next thing on the agenda, which is related, which is I think the way our membership is laid out on recycling probably needs some work. It's unclear. It's not clear to me why the members have such short terms. So I'm going to work with recycling to try to come up with an amendment to that ordinance to have a more sensible membership. But I mean, I'd like to hear what the rest of you think. But my inclination is to keep the three committees separate and to see if we can have a multi-jurisdictional green team. I mean, I really, really like that idea. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, I was coming into this from the idea that obviously we have a very tight budget, and if there was any way to kind of combine the Green Team and the Environmental Commission in any way to just save money and have, the idea that the Green Team would have a broader, power base to do what it wants to do. Just, it seemed at the onset like a good idea, but I guess, clearly that's not the case. So, I guess my mind's been changed. So I think, exploring the multi-jurisdictional Green Team is probably a very good idea, and I think we make a lot of progress there.
Yeah, I'd like to explore that. I think it's a very good idea.
Pete?
I'm just open to what the input that we got tonight, which I think was very helpful and enlightening in terms of what the activities are that the different groups do. And I don't have a problem keeping them separate.
Kevin?
Yeah, I'm comfortable. I mean, I sit on recycling, I sit on environmental committee as well. I appreciate the forum we've had tonight to have the discussion about it. I think there's some very good commentary here. We learned a few things. And there's more to come on that. And just to be clear, the new operative now word for synergy will be cross-pollination. Based on Gloria's comments, so they resonate. I do understand the importance of bees, of course, being a biologist. But I mean, I think I'm very comfortable keeping them separate. I think they can have very separate charters, but I would like to see some more truly cross-pollination. I don't think we've explored that fully. I think we'll get a chance. I talked to Rosemary recently, who's our secretary, obviously, for recycling, and she just got educated on Clean Communities grants. And there's some ability to take that and actually use that in other areas, whether it be rec or whatnot. So she's going to be coming through and actually educating the different committees as well, and trying to solicit some ideas, and maybe also get some ideas from adjacent townships or anybody else in the county, for that matter. So I think there's a lot we can do there. So I think it was a healthy discussion. I think I'm perfectly comfortable keeping them separate, but I do want to see some, again, activity between them so we can actually maximize, what we receive out of this. Yes.
Tim?
Thank you.
I've been informed by a lot of good opinions here, and I'm comfortable keeping them separate. I would like to just reinforce that I believe having the Green Team formalized gives it some authority and gives it at least the eyeballs of the township committee. Just in my experience, when you have ad hoc committees, they go the way of the people who are in them. So I like the idea of keeping it formalized. My big challenge that I see is just staffing and getting enough volunteers for all of these committees. We have vacancies on a lot of committees right now, as it is, and that's part of our community. It's the size of our community. We're not huge. So the idea of looking to other communities and see how we would participate in this could be useful. So I'm comfortable status quo, and keep it on the radar. Just keep thinking about it.
Look, the other issue with ad hoc committees, and there's some law out there on this, is you run the risk of running afoul of the Open Public Meetings Act. Yeah. That somebody points the finger at you and says that you are doing something to circumvent the Open Public Meetings Act, and there's some law out there on that. I'm not a fan of ad hoc or informal committees. If somebody's going to serve, they're going to serve. They're not going to say no because it's a formal committee and say yes because it's ad hoc. So I'd rather make sure that what we're doing complies with the law. I don't want to at least knowingly run afoul. So I think we're very appreciative that everybody came in and weighed in on this tonight. And I think the consensus here is that we're going to keep the three committees separate. I'll reach out to West Amwell, I'll reach out to Delaware and see if they're interested in doing something jointly with the Green Team. I'll report back.
One question, is there any reason we couldn't reach out to the Hopewell team that exists, that already acts that way, and see if there's benefit to that?
We can. I mean, different areas have different focuses, and
sure.
I like to start with my next door neighbors first and kind of migrate out. I know Hopewell's I know,
it's a neighbor of the mountain,
but so. Let's see where it goes. Let me start with West. Let me start with Delaware, and let's see where that goes. Okay, thank you, everybody. This was very helpful.
Thanks for having it.
Item 7, the standing committee reports. Farmland and open space. There is a parcel on Haynes Road that is being put into preservation. That parcel is largely in Delaware Township. There's just a small piece of it in East Amwell. Now, the small piece in East Amwell happens to border Haynes Road, and the County Agricultural Development Board reached out to us, or to me at least, as the mayor, and asked whether we wanted to acquire as part of this a right-of-way that would allow us to widen Haynes Road down the road. Haynes Road in the future, let's go with that. This came up before on Cider Mill Road, and I had a conversation with Fred Gardner about this because there's some history of these sorts of requests in East Amwell. Fred, in turn, I believe, had a conversation with Glorianne about this, and what had come back to me is that historically we do not ask for this right-of-way to widen the roads. Fred explained to me why. It made great sense. We don't need to hold up the preservation of this parcel for something that we're never going to use. We're not going to widen these roads. Widening these roads, if anything, would only encourage development, and that's not what we're looking to do. So I am going to write back, because I need to respond to the CADB and let them know that we will not be seeking to acquire the rights to widen the road. Terry, the Green Acres funding request?
That's just to let you know that that you'll be applying for additional fundings for Wurtsville Road property.
Yeah, no, the Wartsville Industries property, I just didn't know if she was looking for us to adopt a resolution or just to FYI.
It was more of an FYI so that the township committee would be aware of this.
Okay, we as you recall, a few months ago, we were fortunate enough to be able to put the Wurtsville Industries property into preservation. We thought we had all the funding lined up. It turns out that one of the grants that we were looking to get, we're not getting. So there's a hole that has to be plugged. I said if the hole has to be plugged, because I don't want to lose that property, that we would plug it from our open space trust fund. But I've been told that we do not need to do that, that we can get a grant, and that's what this is about. We're going to submit for that grant. The open space improvement and maintenance plan has been undergoing revisions. Allison had given some comments. Glorianne had given some comments. I got a revised draft earlier today. I looked at it quickly. I want to talk to one or two people on the planning board about this before we finalize it, but we will be finalizing that soon, and we'll circulate a final draft, a final version to the committee. I think we are now on to approving the minutes. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sets of minutes to approve. I looked at all of them. I sent Terry comments, I think, to every set. I don't think any of my comments were extensive to any of them. Before we go through these minutes, we were doing relatively detailed minutes for the last couple of years. That takes a significant amount of time. It takes time away from other matters, and since we've started live streaming, I don't see the need to have verbatim minutes. So going forward, our minutes are going to be less detailed And to the extent people want to see what's going on, you can watch the video. So we're not going to torture Terry or Terry's successor or Krista or Pam or others with doing these very long and detailed and often verbatim minutes. And that's not required under the law. So with that little background in mind, let's go through these. The November 29th, 2018 special minutes, which was the hearing on the helistop at the Ridge at Backbrook. Anybody have any comments?
Yeah, I think the edits look fine to me. I just looked over them.
Okay, motion to approve.
I'll move the motion to approve the November 29th meeting minutes.
Comments?
I'm going to abstain from that one. I don't know if I make that now or when we do the vote, but yeah, I wasn't.
You weren't present?
No,
you
I
want
wasn't
to?
here.
You want to?
I wasn't even here yet.
Okay, perfect. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. The November 13, 2018 regular minutes.
December.
I'm sorry, December 13th. Comments? You groaned, Kevin.
No, I was.
Oh.
I was clearing my throat. Yeah, the edits were fine.
Okay.
So,
Motion.
I can move the December 13, 2018
I'll
regular
second.
minutes. Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
I should probably either get longer arms or put on
Just
my
count
reading
me for that
glasses.
until,
The December 13, 2018 executive minutes, if we have comments on those, we should do those in executive session. Anybody have any comments on those?
No comments.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the December 13th, 2018 executive minutes?
I'll move the December 13, 2018 executive minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
The December 27th, 2018 regular minutes? Anybody have any comments?
That looks okay.
Can I have a motion to approve those?
I'll move the December 27 regular meeting minutes.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll abstain. I wasn't here. I'll also abstain.
Who else?
I wasn't here, so.
Okay.
And Chris also.
Okay. Okay, then who seconded?
I did.
Okay, you seconded what you were saying, okay.
The
It's okay.
Administrative.
The December 27th, 2018
Yeah, my lawyer over
executive minutes. If we have any comments, we should do those in executive session. Any comments to those minutes?
No, that's fine.
Motion to approve, please.
I'll move the December 27th executive meeting minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Person-
Two abstains.
Two abstains, okay.
Okay, the January 10th, 2019 special minutes on the budget. Comments? Motion to approve?
I'll move the January 10th special meeting minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
January 10th, 2019 regular minutes. Comments? Motion to approve?
Motion to approve the January 10th regular meeting minutes.
All in favor? I'm sorry, all in favor?
Second.
Aye.
Okay.
I think that catches us up, doesn't it, Terry?
Yes, except for one thing. There was I have a note here someplace. This December 13th, was it the December 13th meeting? Or one of the meetings, I have to double check in the date. We approved them in December, but it was a meeting that's, I think, I don't have it in front of me now, but one of you were not there at the meeting, and when we approved them in December. you
That was
weren't.
me. I think I
Yeah.
was listed as a member
Yeah, so
for that meeting,
just
but I
wanted
was
to
out
let
in
you know.
November
yeah,
traveling.
There were two meetings, like a special and a regular, so we're just removing your name.
Just
as
remove
being-
my name, and then I
But
abstain.
I think that's
That's fine.
back and everything. Yeah.
And for the
Yeah.
record, I do approve the 29th and December 13th meetings. I stepped away
Okay,
when we voted on them now.
Yeah.
Just for the record.
Oh, yeah, no, I had that in the picture,
Okay.
you were away from the.
Could I have a motion to open to the public?
I'll make a motion to open to the public.
I will second said motion to open to the public.
Okay, we are open to the public for comments pertaining to topics not on tonight's agenda. Would anyone like to speak? Yes?
Rich Spiegel, Mount Road. Just on the last comment you made, and I totally agree. I see the pages get bigger and bigger, and Terry has a lot of work she does and gets it done with multiple pages of minutes. Okay, but I would like to bring forward the fact that even though the Open Public Meetings Act, which is better known as the Sunshine Law, does turn around and have in there that the public is allowed to ask that their minutes be mentioned in the minutes. You aware of that, Counselor?
I don't follow what you just said. I'm sorry.
I think he meant his comments, the
In
public.
other words, if I get up and I say I want my comments to remain in the minutes as public information, I have the right to do that.
Certainly petition it, sure.
Also, under the state ethics law, when a constituent asks the elected officials or its government, all right, for any request, that they must respond and not receive any money, any gifts, any favors. So the reason for that is in cases in the past, people that might have a case against the town, and they can say, well, I made that statement at the meeting. Well, and they ask for it to be memorialized. If they don't do that, the person's going to be at a disadvantage, especially in tort claims against the town. If you look at our tort claims for the state of New Jersey, they're pretty big, they're pretty extensive, and pretty broad.
Title 59?
Okay, you might know I got a couple of cases on my mind. Okay, so, and that's another thing I was going to bring up, that I think our employees, so I remember, which I thought was a good idea back in 5, 6, and 7, we would have tutorials in this room where they would discuss. I remember one time, Terry, we put the benches all that way and this way and this way, and I think Trishka Waterbury was one of the lawyers, and we discussed a lot of things. That's when Park was the head of the Board of Adjustment, and a lot of questions were thrown around, and we were asked a lot of things. By the way, I'm going to Oprah your notes.
You're welcome to Oprah, whatever you'd like, Rich.
Okay. So that's the other thing, is I don't think our employees, because I've been getting some negative input from people in town at the way they're being talked to a certain department in our town. Well, I'm going to be very honest with you. The advice I gave them, that's a violation. That's a violation under the tort claim. Okay? So I think maybe our employees ought to be let known that they can't treat and speak to our public just because they feel like harassing them. We had that a long time ago. Okay, and I don't want to see it come back. If you remember, we haven't had any signs gone down on the roads during campaigning in the last couple of years, have we? All right? So I don't want it to happen again. But I think we should let our employees know that, you know, there's laws against that. And if they want a job in government, we should let them know what they could be up against. That's all I have to say.
Anybody else like to make a comment?
Move to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Consent agenda items? Nothing?
No.
Okay.
Did you want to mention Mr. Rue as a possible recycling committee member, as a regular member? He was the
I saw that on here.
And, I know he's been attending the meetings, I believe.
Well, he is still on the Environmental Commission until his successor is appointed, which means he's still the Environmental Commission member to the Recycling Committee.
But you didn't reappoint any of the environmental.
Correct, but the way the law reads,
Okay.
at least, it's not the model of clarity, but I think the way people are interpreting it, and I'm inclined to agree, is that your term expires after 3 years, but you continue until your successor is appointed.
I was not familiar with that, is that correct?
So, I'm happy to send you the law, Terry.
Okay.
So he is, as far as I'm concerned, he's still on the Environmental Commission until his successor is appointed, which means he's still on the Recycling Committee. I want to, over the next few weeks, work with the Recycling Committee to amend the membership ordinance so that it makes more sense, and then we'll sort all that out.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
I just want to kick that can down the road for a little bit,
Okay.
and I don't think it matters because he's still on.
Okay, I'll send them an email in the morning then.
Okay. Ordinance number 1-19, zoning fees. We would like to introduce it this evening. It's pretty straightforward. Our zoning officer, Krista, came to us a while back and told us that our zoning fees are significantly less than surrounding municipalities, and that we are in fact losing money on these applications. It's costing us more to process than what we're getting paid in fees. So she went out and looked at what other municipalities were charging and came back with a recommendation to put us in line with the other municipalities, and that made sense to us. So I'd like to introduce that ordinance this evening. It's nothing monumental, it's just to increase the zoning fees to bring them in line with other municipalities. Could I have a motion to introduce that ordinance?
I'm sorry. Would you be able to read it by title, because we didn't have the ordinance till this afternoon, and just put it in the.
Wait, I have it right here.
At the end.
Do we have copies? Do we have copies for the book?
I can get them to you tomorrow. I'll send you a copy. No?
It is an amendment to Code of East Amwell Township, specifically Chapter 75, fees, to increase the fees for zoning officer permit reviews of construction permits and fees for stormwater management reviews. Do you want me to read the entire ordinance?
No, it's just the title. You
Okay.
can read and everything.
Okay. Could I have a motion to approve the introduction of that ordinance?
I'll move such ordinance.
I'll second.
Any questions?
So just procedurally, this isn't adoption of the ordinance itself, this is just the introduction for
Correct.
comment. Okay.
And there'll be a public hearing
Yep.
next month.
I mean, my only comment is I'm surprised there's actually a fee for a flagpole.
Yeah.
Something I never really thought you needed to get a permit for, but it's an interesting comment. But if she's gone out and done some, I guess some sleuth work on it to see what other townships are doing. I mean, I'm fine in general with the idea. It needs to be refreshed periodically. I understand that aspect. So just a general comment about that. Seems a little bit odd to me, but
Maybe that was in there already, and this was.
well, that's the thing. I mean, it just
It-
now
it-
draws
it-
attention
it-
to
it was.
So-
This, she
no,
didn't
no, I
rewrite
knew she
this.
didn't change
All
it.
she changed was the
Comment,
dollar
just the
amounts.
dollar amount. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just like to see what the original dollar
If you're
is.
flying the American flag in this town, it should be no permit for the flagpole.
Look, I'm not adverse to striking it.
There you go.
The original one didn't have flags.
There you go.
No,
Sounds good.
the original one said for deck fences, sheds, finished basements, she has interior alterations. It said interior renovations, oil tanks.
Well, I asked her to get the existing ordinance and update the dollar amounts.
Well, we have a question about flagpoles.
There's
Yeah.
a copy of the original one.
It's a good point, Terry, because it's not on there. Everything else looks like it's there, including ground signs.
Well, like I said, I'm fine striking flagpoles, or I'm fine telling her to go back and give us a black line of what she did, and we don't introduce it till next month.
I'd like to do that. I'd like to also see the original cost.
There's a copy in front of you. I left you a copy of the page. It
The
says-
three-hole punch one.
Yeah, on the side, it says
This one?
71, 75. That's the
Let's just defer introducing it till next month. Let's ask her for a black line so we can see, because she was supposed to just take the existing one and update the dollar amounts. So if flagpoles was added, I'd like to know why. So we'll just defer introduction. We'll introduce it next month. Standing committee reports? I don't think there are any. Unfinished business. The Ridge at Backbrook Helistop. I think, as most of you know, the township submitted its letter in opposition on January 22nd. I reached out today to the engineer at NJDOT who is overseeing the application, Jerry Leifinger, Leifinger. I told him that we were having a township committee meeting this evening and asked him if he could give me an update as to where things stood on the application. I was a bit surprised by his response and also a bit disappointed by his response. The statute to me seemed to say that they had to rule on it within 90 days of when the application was complete. The application was complete, I believe, November 26th. We had 60 days to give our letter, and it looked like they had an additional 30 days beyond our letter to respond. He said to me today that they are waiting for an FAA airspace determination, that there's a backlog at the FAA. He's not sure when they will get the determination. And so I don't know when they'll rule on the application. I mentioned to him the 90 days, and that seemed to catch him off guard. So I'm not sure what he thinks his deadline is. So I'm not sure when we'll hear back. I said to him, well, let's assume the FAA airspace determination comes through. Are you going to grant the application? And he said, well, the other two engineers, because it's a 3-engineer panel that makes the decision, haven't even seen any of this yet. I said, they haven't seen the township's letter? And he said, no. And I said, well, how long, once you get the FAA airspace determination, is it going to take you to rule on the application? And he said, 1 to 2 days. And so I said to him, well, if the engineers haven't seen this and aren't going to see it until you think it's complete, meaning you get the FAA airspace determination, they're then going to read our letter and rule on this in 1 to 2 days? And he said, yes. That I found very disappointing. I would have thought they would read the letter and there would have been some meaningful deliberative process. It doesn't sound like that. He said 1 to 2 days. He said if they're busy, it might take as much as a week, but that's not because they're looking at our application for a week. It just means they can't get to it. I said, will you respond to our letter? And he said, yes. And I said, will it be a substantive response? And he said, no, we're just going to tell you if it's been approved or denied, and we'll let you know if there are any restrictions. He said, however, we could request a more detailed response, but we would have to submit a written request after they've already ruled on the license. In other words, when they rule on the license, they will send us a letter saying thumbs up or thumbs down and let us know if there are any restrictions. And in that letter it will say, if you'd like more detail, let us know. I asked him if there was an administrative process by which we could appeal their decision if we don't like it. I was pretty sure I knew the answer to that already, having looked at the case law, that the answer was no. And he confirmed that, well, he said to his knowledge there is no administrative process for us to appeal. I believe there's an administrative process for the Ridge to appeal if their license is denied, but I don't think there's any administrative process for us to appeal. We would have to go directly to court. So that's where we are. I had this call this afternoon. I will put this down on paper and have it posted on our website. so that anybody who's interested could see this update. But right now, I don't know when we're going to find out. It's held in abeyance on the FAA airspace determination. And once that happens, apparently they're going to rule very quickly.
Rick, is it possible to get the names of the other two engineers and send the letter directly to them? Because this sounds like you sent a letter to one guy, he got it, and he did nothing with it.
My guess is those other two engineers, if they got the letter, wouldn't even look at it. They're not going to go out of their way. They're going to wait till they get the package. And they're going to sit down and look at it. And this is the way it's been from inception. Every conversation I have with him, it's very clear they grant these things, and yes, they go through the formality of getting the public comments, they go through the formality of getting the township letter, but they grant the licenses. So we will see what happens. So that's my update on the Ridge. I wanted to also talk about the settlement of the Ridge tax appeal. Normally, I don't think that people bring to the township committee property tax appeals. They're always, not always, but typically there are a few of them every year. Residents will appeal their property tax assessment. There were two reasons I wanted to bring this up this evening. One, the Ridge is the largest taxpayer in East Amwell. That doesn't mean that they're a big percentage of our overall taxes. They're not, but they are the largest taxpayer in East Amwell. They challenged their assessment. They challenged it for the years 2013 through 2018, 6 years. We went to court. The trial started. We reached a settlement with the Ridge after, I believe, 2 days of trial. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, and there are a lot of them, and it was a complicated process, but the bottom line is the value of the Ridge, which originally started at almost $20 million when the golf course went live in 2005, I believe, has now declined to $6 million. So the golf course is valued at $6 million. The Ridge has challenged its property tax assessments consistently since it opened. The last settlement, the one we just entered into, our budget does take a hit. It doesn't take a big hit, but it does take a hit. And a lot of work went into it, and ultimately we got the best settlement that we thought we could under the circumstances. A resident submitted an Oprah request to see certain documents in conjunction with that settlement. When we got that Oprah request, I set up a call the very next day with our township lawyer, Carl, and our property tax lawyer, Martin Allen. And I had a very simple question for them. Tim and I did the call. The resident asked for certain documents. My view was, give all the documents. I have nothing to hide. We have nothing to hide. We have nothing to hold back. I'm not sure why the resident wants to see these, but my view was, give them everything. Now, everything includes documents that are attorney-client privileged, deliberative documents, work product documents. I asked a simple question of the lawyers: is there anything illegal, unethical, immoral, or that will otherwise harm East Amwell if I give this resident all the documents? Our property tax lawyer was not keen on doing something like this. It is not typical. So I repeated my question. The answer to the question was no. So my response was, give the resident everything. Why am I raising this? Well, in part because if anyone else wants to see all the documents surrounding this property tax settlement, you can reach out to Carl. He has how many boxes? A few boxes of them, right?
About 3.
About 3 boxes of documents. You're welcome to go through them. We had another resident file an Oprah request for materials regarding an ordinance that we enacted. Again, we could have withheld most of that information on the ground that it's deliberative, and under Oprah, you're not required to turn over deliberative documents. Again, my view was if it's not illegal, immoral, unethical, or will otherwise harm East Amwell, turn it over. And we did. And that's going to be my view going forward on any Oprah requests. If they come in, everything is there for anyone who wants to see it. I would say one thing, though. When you submit these Oprah requests, it does cost the township money to fulfill them. Sometimes it's a relatively expensive process for the township. It takes time away from our clerk, and it costs us legal fees. So I would ask you not to submit Oprah requests for the sake of submitting Oprah requests. I would ask you to submit Oprah requests when you really have a need to see information, because it is costing the township money. But the view of this committee is everything's out in the open. We video the meetings. We're going to start videoing the planning board meetings, and ultimately, as our technology skills get better, we'll probably video most committee meetings. Everything is in the open here, so whatever people want to see, they can see. When Glorianne requested a draft of this document that we were talking about this evening, Terry reached out to me, because normally we don't share drafts. We wait until it's done. My response to Terry was, give her the draft. Just mark a draft so that there's no doubt that it's a draft. That's going to be my view. You want to see something, reach out to Terry. All I ask is, please think of the fact that when you ask for these things, you are costing the taxpayers money. You're taking time away from our clerk. So just bear that in mind. New business.
I'm sorry, under unfinished business or...
Oh, did we have anything else?
New professional service resolution, I put that in since we were talking about tax appeals, but whichever one.
Oh,
Matt Martin, Allen,
right, I'm sorry, I'm not,
and
okay.
right appeal.
Right, we have two, we decided not to renew the contract for our property tax lawyer. For a variety of reasons. We decided not to renew that contract. But there were 2 matters ongoing where he was pretty deeply involved, and our tax assessor said it would be much more cost-effective to allow him to finish up those matters for the township. So he requested that we adopt a resolution agreeing that he can stay on to finish those 2 matters, even though we're not renewing his contract. So the resolution was in the packet.
Yeah, it's a separate one. It was the one that was in front of the new temporary budget.
So if I could have a motion to approve that resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Second. Anybody second?
I'll second.
Questions, comments?
Just one question, Terry. I have it twice. Are there duplicates, or is the...
There was an old draft and a new version.
The new version, if you look at Exhibit 2, only has 2
It only
items.
has 2 items.
Okay, so this isn't...
Okay. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next, we have a resolution regarding a settlement of one of these two matters. A resident appealed her property tax settlement. There's an administrative appeal available. She took that. They reduced her property tax settlement. She wasn't happy with that. She thought it should be reduced even more. Had filed in court. Our tax assessor recommended a settlement which gave her a little bit more off from what the administrative appeal produced. Economically, it didn't make sense for the township to fight that in court. It's de minimis. So I'd like that resolution was also in the packet. Could I get a motion to approve that?
Yeah, I'll move that resolution for the tax appeal settlement.
I'll second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Under new business, Terry, what are we supposed to do with A? I couldn't figure that out.
The Country Classics, that's the one we're going to table because we sent the information. The engineer has to go out and see if they've done.
Yeah,
what they
that's.
have
I
to
thought
do.
it wasn't ripe yet for us. It's not
No,
right.
They
Okay.
I had it on the agenda because I assumed he would have had something, but.
Okay, so we're going to table that one.
Yeah.
Okay, B, I want to take a minute to talk about. The public use of the municipal building. Apparently, historically, members of the public could file an application with East Amwell and come in and use this municipal building. Quite honestly, I never really paid much attention to that. We did, in this committee in January 2017, we did amend that resolution to delete the provision that allowed political parties to use the municipal building. That just struck me as wrong. It just struck me as ethically wrong for political parties to be using the municipal building. So we struck that. We received an application from a political party to use the municipal building, and that got me thinking about this more broadly.
May I interject and just say, I know that you've removed it, and there was a discussion about political parties, but my assumption when I allowed the organization was that it was a community,
Terry, we have no issue with
I know,
that.
but I just wanted to
Okay.
be clear for the public because they had used it, I think, last year, and then they used it this year, and when someone brought up there was a meeting. I'm just saying that my interpretation, it was a community event. I'm not political. I never even considered the fact that there was something different, but that's all well, and I'm just passing it out there. And
So
you can do it.
we,
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this, and from a security perspective, a liability perspective, I don't know why we would be allowing public organizations to come in and use the building, often unsupervised, because it's at nights or on weekends. That just didn't make a lot of sense to me. So I wanted to have a discussion. My inclination is not to allow that. I mean, why do we want to have public organizations in here using the building? There's no supervision. There are liability issues. It didn't make a lot of sense to me, but I wanted to see what other people thought.
Well, is there any cost associated with an application to use the building?
No.
Well, it might be a way to, maybe if you were to have some kind of supervision, at least for non-political organizations, you don't think the Boy Scouts want to use the thing, and they pay like $100 to have some sort of employee sit here for an hour.
The problem is then we have to find an employee who's willing to come in on a Saturday or a Sunday and sit here.
Yeah.
And you may not know that in advance, or you may approve the application and the employee says, well, I'll come in and sit here, and then the employee gets sick that morning, and now where are we? We've already told the organization that they could come in,
Yeah.
and there's nobody here to supervise them. Plus, if something happens to the employee in supervising them, I don't know why we want to take that on. I just don't.
It seems like an undue risk to take on, and it can also easily be abused. And I think it's an unusual practice, quite honestly. I mean, most of the towns I've lived in or grew up in, I don't recall ever allowing that to occur. It seems unusual. I agree with you.
Is there a statutory requirement that because it's a public building, that it be open to the public?
I'd have to do some research off that when I answer off the cuff.
There's a difference being open to the public to come in and use the services and also using it for your own benefit.
During regular business hours.
Yeah.
During whatever hours are published that will be open. I agree, we should probably confirm that we're not doing this because we have to comply with some law, but I would be very surprised. But this kind of goes back to the earlier point of why I want to put cameras in here. I mean, we have people in here at night working alone, no security cameras. To me, that creates a liability issue for the township. When security can be provided on a cost-effective basis and you don't provide it and something happens, you're setting yourself up for a lawsuit on the ground that you didn't meet the minimum standards. And the minimum standards tend to be dynamic. Because security cameras 20 years ago cost a fortune. Today they're not that expensive. So to me, it seemed like we were setting ourselves up for problems by not having some security cameras. To me, we're setting ourselves up for problems by allowing people to use this building in off hours. And so I just wanted to, I think we ought to let Carl do his research. I think in the meantime, we ought to put a moratorium on these applications and see where this goes.
Yeah.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
Okay. Next on the under new business is ending the probationary employment for Krista Parsons and Rosemary Georgette. When you hire a new employee, there's a 1-year probationary period. We hired Krista last year to be our planning board administrator. We hired Rosemary Georgette to be our administrator for the Board of Health. The Recreation and Parks Committee, which we're going to change the name to Parks and Recreation, and the Recycling Committee. Both of them, their year is ending in March, I believe, their probationary period. I've talked to people I've worked extensively with Krista. I know a number of other people who've worked extensively with Krista. She gets glowing reviews from the people who work with her. I've talked to people who work with Rosemary Georgette. I don't really work with her that much. We got very good reviews.
I do.
So,
and I would concur with that.
So it seemed to me to be a no-brainer that they come off of probation and they're going to stay on.
I'll move the resolution.
Awesome. Yeah, second.
Do we need a resolution for this?
It's in the package.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We already talked about security cameras. We already talked about energy efficient upgrades. F, there was a request made by the Recreation and Parks Advisory Committee to change the name to Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, because that's what other townships do, and it just seems to be more normal. I have no objection. I said, fine, you want to change it? I'll draft an amendment to the ordinance. It'll take me 2 seconds, and we'll amend the ordinance. So I'll draft an amendment, and it will be the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee.
I think it's wonderful.
This is going to be the highlight of my tenure as mayor, okay?
It's alphabetical this way. Parks and
It just flows better.
It does. I mean, all kidding aside, it does. And you tend to see Parks and
You
Recreation.
want to normalize it with what everybody's using. It's
The
fine.
trucks are in New York City. I'll say Parks and Recreation.
That's right.
And then we also discussed at the very beginning of the meeting that Terry is retiring, and we are going to ASAP advertise for a new municipal court with the goal of having someone fill the position before Terry retires. And I also will see if we could twist Terry's arm to stay on for some period post-retirement on an hourly basis to consult with the person that we hire. I will come hat in hand and hope that Terry will do that for us. Okay, I think we are now. Can I have a motion to open to the public?
So moved. Second.
Okay, we are open to the public for anyone who wants to say anything about anything or anybody. Wow, we got a lot. I'll start from the back and work forward. Glorianne?
Glorianne Roby, 144 Lambertville, Hopewell Pike. Very interesting, the security cameras. Who's going to view these security cameras? Will you have something at home that you can look at the security camera and know that things are all right here? Who's gonna review them?
The security cameras are going to be hooked up to a recording device
Yes.
that will record and store what's recorded for a period of time. That period of time depends on how much memory we buy for the security device, and it'll be enough so that if something happens and the police need to see the security cameras, they'll be able to watch the recordings. I don't think the recordings will be kept for more than 30 days or so.
But then someone has to review them.
No.
How
No.
are you going? Why not?
Why?
I would think, well, you're very concerned about people coming into this building, even organizations, utilizing it for meeting purposes. So you're very upset about this. So if you have security cameras, for heaven's sakes, you'd want to know. Maybe someone doesn't set off the alarm, but they're in here. So I would imagine that one way of handling that, you're the mayor, you're taking full possession of that role. You could have some kind of a way of watching that security camera and making sure that the municipal building is not being ill-used. I just suggest that to you because I think that's probably something you will be interested in doing, and I'd like to get just a little bit ahead. Thank you.
So may I speak? Just-
Oh, no, you
Since
feel
this
free.
is, since I happen to have some expertise in this area. This is used for forensics purposes only.
Yeah, right.
Well, it is. That's best practice. You can tie it into a monitoring station if you like. You can.
You would.
There's no need to here, because there's not ongoing operations that we're trying to monitor for health and safety purposes. So it would just go to an NVR, which is a network video recorder, and it works in a cycle. And it just self-erases. And it's there when law enforcement needs to review something. Pure and simple.
If there's if somebody reports that their car was hit in our parking lot, there'll be cameras that the police could look at. If someone came through the front door and harassed our clerk, and our clerk didn't know who it was, and she called the police can view the video to see who was there. But to me, the real value of the video isn't so much the recordings, it's the deterrent effect. I talked to Jason, and we're going to put signs around the building that you're on camera.
That's right.
And that, it's really the deterrent effect, because right now, everybody knows we don't have video cameras here, and you look around, you don't see any video cameras. We had our Christmas tree lights cut this December. We had our ceremony, and what was it, Allison, a couple of days after the ceremony? Somebody cut the wires on our Christmas tree lights. And 2 neighbors as well. So I don't know that the municipal building was a target per se, because there were 2 neighbors had their lights cut also. But it would have been nice to have a video. And the cameras will be night vision cameras. They're actually very good quality cameras. And they're color cameras, so that if a car hits another car in the parking lot and runs, if it's black and white, the police can't tell what color the car was that hit. With the color cameras, they can see that it was a red Toyota Celica, whatever. That's the purpose for the cameras. I'm not going to sit at home and watch them. We're not paying somebody to monitor them. We're not going to hire a security guard. But they will serve a useful purpose. I saw other hands. Rich?
Yeah, let me throw a little light for you on your question about political parties using the building. That came up from 2005, 6, and 7. Okay, that same thing. And that's how come, what is it, an ordinance or was it a resolution?
It's a resolution.
That was requested back then when the Democratic Party wanted to use the building for a meeting, and you couldn't discriminate and say they could and the other party couldn't. But here was the problem that we couldn't get away from saying yes because it would have been discrimination. Is at that time we were letting the church use the building for masses. And council felt that because the church was using the building for classes, church, Sunday church, it would be discriminatory to say somebody else couldn't use it. And precedent was set back then, and that's why it was agreed upon. And that was the only reason it was agreed upon. Because we had let, how many years did the church use the building, do you remember? I know it was quite a few years. You see, and that was the thing, the building the taxpayers paid for. Basically, it was taxpayers' money. And for that fact, when we revised, the best person to talk to would be Dick. And look into the minutes, we had some pretty big discussions on it. And that was the reason why you have it on the books.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Francis?
Sadly, I was at those meetings, Rich.
What's that?
I was at those meetings. So
Oh,
I
okay,
can-
you remember the church using the
Oh, yeah,
building?
Living Waters.
Yeah, that's it.
And thanks, Francis Scavian, Stillwartsville Road. To speak to the security cameras, what you said, Mr. Matthews, about for forensic purposes. On February 12th, as an employee of a company in Bridgewater, I left at 1:30 in the morning because there was a regulatory audit going on. And if you work for corporate America, you have no life of your own and if the company needs you. So as I'm walking out the building, black ice, slid, broke my ankle, destroyed the nerves in my leg, started a 5-year odyssey in hell. Yeah. I have that video, compliments of a security camera, and it removed any, shall we say, potential allegation of, oh, this is a slip and fall. It wasn't. And there weren't a whole lot of folks. So in terms of there being security cameras, I think that's a great idea. I would urge you to put the same things in your own township-owned building of Clausen House, not wait for the society to come up with something.
I thought cameras, we have them in Clausen House.
And-
Don't we,
and-
Kat? We have cameras in Clausen House.
And is that video similarly secured or whatever for forensic purposes. It's your building. That's all I'm saying in that regard. And as for nefarious purposes, you know what? If there were cameras here and the wall a few years ago, or the walls could talk, you know, people might get struck by lightning. I tend to be closer to the ground. I have a lower risk. To go back to, you know, meetings on meetings, and then suddenly things came out. To go back to the Ridge, I would hope that when you post, and Big Brother, hi, you would post the time that Mayor Wolf was discussing that specific part in the time, to where what the state employee that I'm paying for and whatever, so that the public at large, perhaps some folks in our state legislature, Senate, DOT, or media somewhere might, or governor or whomever, would talk about what kind of public service is the public servant doing or not doing. This is egregious. This has been a rubber stamp since day one. Helen Keller could have seen that. You put a whole lot of effort into responding and doing research. People in the audience, Lisa and others. And bottom line, Mr. Governor, Mr. Murphy, your departments don't give a flying fig. You thought I was going to go there. About the public or the taxpayer or whatever. This is a leverage. And the nice thing about you settling that tax appeal is all the little ugly details that we've been asking from the public side for all these years about what are they paying was sealed under litigation. Now we know that in 2030, that he has to start paying the people back, including the person he sued after he died, to get money out of the estate, to keep paying their dues because it's indentured forever. Golf courses are a dying industry. The Ridge is Joel's pension plan, his get out of jail free card, whatever it is. But it should not have the taxpayers and the residents and those impacted put at risk because a couple of bureaucrats in the state government don't care about figs with wings. And somebody should do something. If the people in the audience that are unhappy with what's been going on got onto social media, got onto NewJersey.com, excerpted that little phrase, and it got out there, and I'll put it out there if somebody excerpts it for me, then, sometimes you gotta have you ever heard the Southern thing about training a mule? You want to train a mule? First you get a 2x4. This is to attract the mule's attention. And down in Trenton, there are a whole lot of jackasses, speaking of the four-legged kind, that might need to be asked some uncomfortable questions about what they're doing. Is it public service or is it public service? And I think it's pretty clear from my perspective that that is not what goes on. And, they call it the Soprano state for a reason. If you know the right people, you can grease the wheels and the little people will move away, or they'll fall off the perch, or they'll die, or something else.
Thank you, Francis. Thank
Okay?
you.
I want to know that timing.
Let me just give you a quick 2 points, something on she's saying that I've got to go to. Number one is a good friend of mine is my neighbor. I've known him for 30 years, and we're pretty close. And I know he's one of the people on the committee with the town for the heliport, the Ridge It Back, the trail people. I got pretty involved when I was in with aviation with FAA. FAA controls Allentown Airport, controls the traffic over the Silent Mountain, okay? We are what you call the super highway. If you sit at night and look up in the sky, you'll see them all lined up. Well, the thing is, this is the turnpike that goes to Kennedy, goes to Newark, goes to Logan, and goes to, I think it's New Hampshire has an airport, okay? Okay, now here's the thing. I got to know the person that Terry Harrison introduced me to personally at that time that was ahead of the control area for this area. And I'm not at liberty to mention his name, and I won't do it anyhow because he's a federal employee and I don't like to mention anybody's name in public without their okay. But that letter you got from the FAA, I did call, that letter actually was generated from FAA in Washington, okay? Now my problem is, I called his number, and of course somebody else answered, and they told me he got a better promotion. So now he's in charge of one of the biggest airspace in the Midwest. And I can't get a hold of him, because my clearances that I need on the computer won't let me go that far. I would be more than willing to give you his name and you his name, and I'm sure with your clearances on the computer. And the reason I say this, it's very important you talk to this gentleman, because nobody knows this airspace better than he does. And I think, and I told my neighbor the same thing, they use the wrong argument. They need a better argument. Now, I suggested the better argument would be, number one, Terry, what's that bird group we went and with in South America for that bird that goes, okay, I remember that. Okay, that's one, okay, and the other is the bald eagle, and the other is our birds that we have around here, the falcons, okay? So I suggested to him that should be their argument, not the horses, not the cows, not the spooking. When we live in an area, let me tell you, even your turkey buzzards, they're protected. You can't shoot them. They're protected. So could you see a helicopter coming down and hitting our bald eagle? Could you see a helicopter coming down hitting our falcon? And hit, you see what I'm saying? I think that argument will be stronger than the argument they're using right now. And this person I'm talking about, we have an airspace up here.
Rich, get us his name and we'll reach out to him.
I'll give it to you privately.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other comments? Motion to close?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Terry, is there anything we need to go through on the administrative reports?
Just the bills of the evening.
Motion to approve the bills of the evening?
So moved.
I know you had reviewed them.
Yeah.
You're okay with them?
Okay.
Second?
Comments?
I moved it.
Pete seconded it. Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I don't think there's anything in the correspondence.
I had one question. I noticed on the state police report there was dumping on the municipal grounds. Does anybody know the details?
I asked about that because I thought it was the boxes. Somebody left recycling boxes outside.
Oh, I
It wasn't
saw that. Yes,
But
I saw that.
it was somebody who was building a home on one of the bigger roads, and he was having like brush and a lot of other big loads of brush from a commercial vehicle dumped off at our grit yard. And we have this sign that says you can't dump commercial dumping. So the police were there. There was a lot of involvement, and the guy ended up with a few tickets. So that's.
Thanks.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved. I'll second.
You can have it, Chris.
Be my guest. Don't fight over.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Do we need to sign checks or something?
Yes.
Is that what Margaret gave us?
Well, I don't know how many we have.
Sign this stuff from Margaret.
I did. I already-